We're up to stage 15 in the Tour de France. It's a day of transition as the race makes its way from the Pyrenees to the Alps. The run to Montpellier is very flat, but crosswinds, as mentioned, will play a major role in the final outcome. It'll be a case of hanging on over the 193 kilometres. The chase for green jersey points will resume, with Mark Cavendish currently leading that competition from JJ Rojas. Thomas Voeckler has a lead of 1 minute and 49 seconds on the general classification. He'll wear the Maillot Jaune yet again from Frank Schleck, Cadel Evans, Andy Schleck. And there you have the two Italians, Ivan Basso and Damiano Cudigo, with Alberto Contador inside the top 10. Of the Australians, of course, Cadel Evans is the best placed. Richie Porte has moved up to position number 67. But watch out for the likes of Matthew Goss and Mark Renshaw. The boys from HTC High Road will certainly be in the mix today. As you can see, grey skies here on the Mediterranean coast of Montpellier. This is a place where the Tour has visited a couple of times over the last 5 to 6 years. It'll be a nervous peloton, the winds very strong, with a top temperature of around 23 degrees expected when the riders arrive, with the chance of rain as well. We can go to the commentary team now. Here's Matthew Keenan first up, and he'll be followed by Paul Sherwin and Phil Liggett. This is stage 15.
This part of France is famous for its sparkling white wine, which obviously sits well and truly in the shadows of the sparkling white variety that comes from the Champagne region. But it is pretty good down here. A tough day for Andy Schleck yesterday. We saw him steal a little bit of time, just 2 seconds he managed to claw back over the top of Evans and Contador, and also, well, let's not forget Thomas Voeckler in that yellow jersey. But Andy Schleck, well, he was required the anti-doping control immediately after the stage at the top of Plateau de Bay, and then less than an hour later, once he'd made his way off the climb, was down in his restaurant having dinner. He was called upon for a random drug test once again. And Andy Schleck expressed that he wasn't too happy with the fact that he had to walk through a restaurant full of dining people with his urine sample in his hand. He tweeted that he doesn't complain about doping control, but maybe the ones that are doing the anti-doping could communicate a little bit better. He makes a fair point. Surely 2 tests within 2 hours of each other, it's not going to make much difference. He holds one distinction, number 133, Mikel Delage. If it was the green jersey just raced for the intermediate sprint points, it would be Delage that would be the leader of that classification. He's been in so many breakaways. For the intermediate sprints, it would be Delage on 102 points, 30 clear of Mark Cavendish, and then Rojas in 3rd position. But as it actually stands in the battle for that green jersey, it's Cavendish that's at the top of the table. He's 13 clear of Rojas and 24 clear of Philippe Gilbert, and in a perfect position today to further extend his lead. And here is Philippe Gilbert, the man that sits in 3rd place in the race for that green jersey. You might recall Philippe Gilbert 2 days ago. He went back to one of the race official cars. And he was having a chat with Jean-Francois Pichot, who's the right-hand man to Christian Prudhomme, the director of the Tour. Well, Rojas, the Spanish sprinter, who sits in 2nd place in the race for the green jersey, has claimed that Gilbert was actually going back to Pichot to have the conversation, alleging that Cavendish was holding onto cars as they were going up the climbs and to try and sort things out. Well, Amiga Pharma Lotto, the team, has denied that Gilbert was having that conversation. Pichot himself said that wasn't the case, and they've been keeping a very close eye on him. And then the guy that's been driving the broom wagon, or the sag wagon if you prefer, at the back of the peloton has said, no, haven't seen Cavendish hold on to the cars at all. So that battle between Rojas and Cavendish, it's on the road, it's off the road, it's a war of words. Today it's going to be a war of speed. They've got some history, the Movistar team, with Mark Cavendish. This is Nicky Terpstra just returning back to that breakaway group after a small mechanical problem. It's not the first time that a rider from Movistar has accused Cavendish of holding on to team cars and other race vehicles through the mountains. We saw it at the Giro d'Italia this year, the stage of the Tour of Italy that was held down in Sicily that went to the top of Mount Etna. At the end of that stage, Francesco Ventoso made the exact same accusation against Cavendish. Cavendish responded pretty quickly, saying, "There's more cameras following me than anybody else. If I was doing it, I'd be caught." Must be something about shoes in Monaco. Thor Hushoff and Philippe Gilbert live in Monaco and they're training partners together. And it was a couple of days ago, just before we saw Hushoff win the stage, that he was back at the team car, changing shoes, and it happened to be the left shoe as well that he was changing, just as it was with Philippe Gilbert. BMC, the right-hand side of the screen, on their toes once again. It's Michael Scar that is at the front, the big Swiss rider, followed by Burkhardt. It's then Evans, Kenziato, and George Hincapie not far away. At least the shoe problem for Philippe Gilbert is a little more balanced. He's got it on both sides. And what a tour it's been for Amiga Pharma Lotto. They've managed to win 3 stages, despite the fact their big hope for the general classification was knocked out of the tour on stage 9 with a whole list of injuries. Jürgen van den Broek, 5th overall last year, out of the tour on stage 9 this year, punctured lung, 3 broken ribs and a fractured shoulder blade. Hopefully the results of the team are bringing a smile to his face as he continues to recover. Just the one rider from this breakaway group has been a stage winner at the Tour in the past. That's the little man that sits at the back, 153, Samy Dumoulin. He won into Nantes in atrocious conditions in 2008. It was stage 3 on that occasion. A small breakaway like this that managed to survive when everybody thought that it wouldn't. Don't like Sammy's chances this time around. The same year, Michalik Native, the little Russian in this group from the Katusha team, he finished in 2nd place on stage 5. That was a stage in a Perpignan that was won by Thomas Voeckler. Hasn't Voeckler made all the noise this year? The French are getting very excited. The big concern, obviously, for the French and the prospects of Thomas Voeckler staying, well, even in the top 5 in the general classification by the time we do make it to Paris, is that final individual time trial. When we look at Voeckler's performance in the past against the clock, back in 2004 when he held the yellow jersey for 10 days, the final time trial, which was over 55 kilometres, he lost 9 minutes and 41 seconds. Last year in the final time trial, which was a similar distance, it was 52 k's, he lost 9 minutes and 11 seconds, finishing in 128th position. So he's going to have to turn that round substantially if he's to hold on to that high place overall. Having said that, it's up to the others to take the time off Thomas Voeckler. Cadel Evans was really quite frank this morning before the start of the stage when he did a brief interview with one of the other media outlets. He said, in terms of the time trial, with the expectations that everybody else will be able to get that time back off Thomas Voeckler, he said that he's done pretty well 2 times in the past not to win the Tour in the final time trial.
Welcome to viewers in Western Australia. You're watching SBS's coverage of the 2011 Tour de France. This is stage 15, from Limoux to Montpellier, a total distance of 192 kilometres. Let's now cross to our commentary team.
Because it could just be their little chance to try and cause a bit of a split. I made reference earlier on to the fact there was a split on this very same stage back in 2007. And I'm also thinking about that stage in 2009, stage 3 that went to the Grand Mot. It was HTC setting up the win for Mark Cavendish, exactly as they're trying to do today. When we saw a split, and Lance Armstrong managed to get in the front of that split and take some time on his major rivals. Evans has got some good teammates around him to support him. Alberto Contador, however, he might find himself fighting on his own front a little bit more so than Evans and the Schleck brothers. Nicky Terpstra for Quick Step at the back of the group. They've another team that's had a difficult tour with a lot of abandonments, but they have been in quite a few of the breaks. We've seen Sylvain Chavanel and Jerome Pinot over the last few days get themselves in the moves. This time around it's the Dutchman that's in there. Well, the winner of the stage yesterday, Jelle Venendaert, might have come a bit of a surprise to some of you, the fact that he was able to get up and take that victory. But he's a man that's shown a lot of talent for a long time. Back in 2006, at the Under-23 World Championships, he finished in 5th position, which just gave a bit of an indication as to how much talent he's got. His career so far has really been hampered by injury to this point. He's had some nasty falls. In fact, Rob Arnold from Ride Cycling Review, one of the magazines, the lead magazine down in Australia, had a chat this morning with Robin Tyler, who's an Australian that now lives in Belgium, that used to work as a soigneur with the CSC team. And she's done some work with Jelle Venendaert, who, when they first took a look at him and did the bike fit to make sure everything was right, said that he was spot on. You wouldn't have changed a thing. He then had a nasty crash at a training camp, another fall where he was trying to follow Samuel Sanchez on a descent. A lot of problems with his lower back, a lot of problems as well with his knees. And for a couple of seasons, he was really peddling in squares. He's managed to get himself right now, and the Jelle Venendaert that we saw yesterday is the real Jelle Venendaert, and we should see more of him in the future. Based on what we did see yesterday, I hope we do. Chance to look down at the town of Narbonne, where sure Mark Cavendish will have some fond memories. He was a stage winner here, it was 3 years ago. 2008 he managed to win a stage here. It was only his debut Tour de France, Cavendish, in 07, that he didn't pick up a win. He's been very busy since then. 18 so far. Very likely to add another one to his list today. This old Romanesque church that we get a chance to take a look at, dating back to the 11th century. It really does give you a chance to remind you of just how short our time is on the planet when we go through some of these old towns and you see churches dating back 1,000 years. We really are here for a short time. I hope you're enjoying the Tour de France this year and making it a good time. Back on board with the leading group of 5. They're now down to 2 minutes and 32 seconds, their advantage. Working out perfectly for Thomas Voeckler, as Delage is the best place rider in this breakaway group, and he's an hour and 48 minutes behind that yellow jersey of the Frenchman. And the French are yet to get themselves a stage victory. The last time at the Tour de France where they went home empty-handed was way back in 1999, which was the first tour that was taken out by the American Lance Armstrong. They have had a lot to cheer about, however. They've had leaders in all the various classifications of the race so far, with the exception of that green jersey. Even though we're still a long way to go, I think it's going to be a very quick final 120 Ks today. You can see the urgency in this leading group of 5. At this point in the race, throughout the first week, when it was a case of let's wait until the peloton starts chasing and then really start to open up the throttle, they've got the foot to the floor at this point very early on. They know they don't have a lot of time to play with, 2:39 being their current advantage. And the tailwind, it's going to make it very quick all the way through to the finish line. The car just going past, on the horn. A good lesson for everybody that's trying to overtake. But pay attention, it looks like France 2 is coming up just behind them on this occasion. The various cars that you see out on the course, the red cars, they're driven by the race officials. In one of those cars, you'll have Christian Prudhomme. There'll also be race radio sitting back behind the main peloton itself, which then calls up the various cars that gives them instructions as to when they can or can't go past the peloton. The other car that you saw just moments ago overtake that leading group of 5 was one of the VIP cars, and they're always driven by an ex-professional, someone that's ridden the race. And one of the men that does drive the car is Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle, who was the winner of Paris-Roubaix twice back in the early 90s. The Liquigas colours with the Ivan Basso in the centre of the picture. It was like an old diesel engine yesterday, Ivan Basso. He just doesn't have that zip to be able to respond to the real accelerations of the Schleck brothers when they start to attack. Played nicely into the hands of Cadel Evans, it did yesterday, the riding of Ivan Basso. It was like sitting in 5th gear doing 40 k's an hour and trying to overtake a couple of occasions yesterday, Ivan Basso. But his form is getting better with it each day, and he should not be underestimated. Basso currently sits in 5th place. He's 3 minutes and 16 seconds down. He's had a busy year so far, Samy Dumoulin. He's had plenty of success, but not in some of the major races that we're accustomed to seeing him win in. Although he did manage to pick up 2 stage wins down at the Volta Catalunya, which is, you'd consider equivalent to a race like Paris-Nice down in Spain. It is a pretty good result. I might retract my earlier statement. He has had a couple of good wins. Volta Catalunya, it's a very good race. I take it back, Sammy. My apologies. Well, this is a case of Team Europcar trying to attempt to get the other teams of the sprinters to take up all the chasing. And we can see now the advantage is moving back out to 2 minutes and 51 seconds. Mark Walters, one of the directors of Omega Pharma Lotto, has said, well, they're going to try and win the stage today with Andre Greipel, but they won't contribute to any of the chasing. The reason being that Omega Pharma Lotto, they're now down to just 6 riders left in the race. And they've already won 3 stages, so they don't have the pressure to try and get a stage victory. It's up to the likes of, well, really Lamprey to contribute to the chasing, because of the teams expected to win a stage, they're the one team that is yet to do so. So maybe we'll see the Italian squad come and support HTC towards the back end of the stage to get the better of this group of 5. This group will be getting reports via race radio that back in that main peloton, there's a few riders pulling off to the side of the road to take a nature break. Europcar aren't interested in doing the chase, so they'll try and make the most of it and see where they can just knock out an extra 30 seconds or so in their advantage. It's Cavendish. Does he make it number 19 today? I dare not bet against him. Looks like a mechanical problem for the Manx Missile, a front wheel on this occasion. No need for him to be concerned at all. In fact, it's a back wheel for Cavendish this time around. I wonder where Mark Cavendish will be riding in season 2012. Rumours that HTC have managed to secure another sponsor for next season, or maybe continuing with HTC themselves. Bob Stapleton, who's the owner of that team, has made a statement in the media earlier on today saying that throughout the time of their sponsorship of the team, they've had €400 worth of media exposure, and a lot of it courtesy of that guy in the green jersey. What he does do, Mark Cavendish, even if he doesn't win, which is a pretty rare occasion, he gives you plenty of coverage. Bernie Eisel dropping back to collect him as we look at number 98. That's Sylvester Schmid from the Liquigas team. He was missing in action yesterday as we went to Plateau de Bay, and he'll need to be back in action come the Alps if Ivan Basso is to stand a chance in this year's tour.
It's all in for the finals round of the Women's World Cup. With every match a knockout, it's win or go home. The FIFA Women's World Cup Finals on SBS. Visit the World Game website for match times.
Innovation. Technology. Design. Scott.
At HTC, we're always looking to you for inspiration. That's why we created the HTC Desire S, so you can glide effortlessly through life. The HTC Desire S with HTC Sense is available exclusively from Telstra. Glide into a Telstra store to see the HTC Desire S in action.
Hi, I'm Jenny Brocky. What you don't know about Australia's next migrant boom, the ethics of eating meat and revenge. Does it really make you feel good? Join me when Insight returns.
Insight is back Tuesday, July 26.
Well, by comparison to the Pyrenees that they've just ridden away from and the Alps that they're heading towards, this is a very easy climb at just 2.2 kilometres in length with an average grading of 4.6%. It takes them to a mere 208 metres above sea level. Once we get down to the Alps, we'll be heading to 2,700 metres. And that could have a major impact. The other difference between the Pyrenean climbs and the Alpine climbs is in the Alps they seem to be more exposed and the wind can be more of a factor. Well, back out over that 4-minute mark. In fact, out over the 4-minute mark for the first time as the bottle is on board once again. The clean bottle. This is Anne Bush marketing at its best. Chance to look down upon this circular village, which dates back some 1,000 years. Extraordinary looking structure right in the centre of it. The Roman influence throughout this part of France, right down here towards the Mediterranean, is pretty evident. I'm sure you'll see quite a lot of it throughout today's stage. It doesn't look too dissimilar to Mont Saint-Michel, where we almost started from at this year's tour. We managed to go through there on stage 4. Not quite as significant, but maybe a junior version of it. And the fact that we are down across the Mediterranean today is another reminder of how significant the wind could be on the stage today. And for the leading group of 5, the good news for them is that for the majority of the stage, that wind will be right up their backside to give them some sort of chance to get at least within striking distance of that finish line, to be able to hold the field off. This is Michalek native at the front of the race. It's been a tough tour for Katusha. There's been one positive doping test so far throughout this year's race, and that came courtesy of Katusha, and it was with Alexander Kolobnev returning a positive test for a diuretic. The same drug that Shane Warne tested positive for back in 2003, but I'm not sure that Kolobnev is going to end up with a date with Liz Hurley as a result of that one. Nicky Terpstra now just setting the pace at the front of this group. We can see his number this time through. The wind vest is off, number 129 at the head of affairs with Samuel Dumoulin about to come through and share the pacemaking. Dumoulin, the only rider from the break that has been a stage winner of the Tour de France in the past. He had some good form in the month of June, Sammy Dumoulin. At the Criterium de Dauphiné in June, which was won by Bradley Wiggins, we had a stage finish on stage 2 that went into Lyon, the hometown of Dumoulin. He was the crowd favourite, as you would expect. He just had to settle for second position. He got pipped by John Degenkolb, the German sprinter on the HTC High Road team. Degenkolb not at the Tour de France this year. He's in just his first year as a professional. He's got a couple of years to wait, perhaps. If Mark Cavendish goes to a different team, he might get his chance next year. Expecting to hear more from Bob Stapleton within the next 24 hours as to what's happening with the HTC High Road squad. And the rest day tomorrow, not expecting to hear much from Cadel Evans. The media manager from BMC Racing has said there'll be no press conference tomorrow with the Australian. It's a rest day. He needs to take full advantage of it, heading towards the big rendezvous with the Alps. I wonder whether Contador and Schleck will choose to do the same. Inside the final 200 metres, if anybody from this group is going to want to get the points, I'm tipping it will be Delage, who's at the front of the group right now in those white colours from FDJ. He's been very active throughout this year's race in the breakaway groups. Just to spoil the show, it's Ignative that goes over the top in first place, collecting just the 1 point on this Category 4 climb. Well, so far, Michael Delage, who's in the breakaway today, he hasn't won a stage, but he has managed to win the most competitive board on 2 occasions. So he's found himself riding around the peloton with the red number on his back twice. He's in with a chance to make it number 3 this time around. And his teammate, Jeremy Watt, who we've seen a lot of throughout this year's race, who was the 3rd place finisher on that stage in Allure that was taken out by Thor Hushovd, he's also won it twice. So it could be a battle between those 2 teammates as to who's going to get the prize for the most competitive at the end of the race. Back on board with the main peloton as Europcar assume control of the main field, waiting for the teams of the sprinters to really start the chasing. Another chance for Garmin Cervelo today as well with the American Tyler Farrar. He's managed to survive through the mountains. New Zealander Julian Dean, we should see him at the end of the stage having to do the job for Tyler Farrar. Had so much success between just a few teams so far at this year's race. HTC, Garmin Cervelo and Omega Pharma Lotto. They really have dominated when it comes down to stage victories and leading the various classifications. The only exception, of course, being that yellow jersey with Thomas Vauquelin. It's all the big favourites for the final one. The main contenders for the general classification, well, they're just waiting patiently for now at least. Well, it's not a perfectly flat run through to the finish line here in Montpellier. There's a couple of lumps for them to contend with. The intermediate sprint comes some 46 kilometres before the finish line. I don't think that they'll be caught by that point. I do think they'll be caught by the time we do get into the outskirts of town. Looking forward to seeing what happens at that intermediate sprint. Given that it's so close to the finish line and there's a real race for that green jersey, I wonder whether Cavendish will go for the intermediate sprint or save his legs for the stage win, where there's 45 points up for the victory. Another reminder of the win on today's stage. Look at those flags off to the right-hand side of the road. This could be the calm before the storm. We could have a repeat of a few of those stages in the first week where there was real carnage, real nervous tension, and some time lost by the general classification contenders, despite the fact there's no mountains on the stage. Everybody's going to have to be on their toes. The safest place to be is with this group of 5, but there's a lot of energy spent out here, of course. It never ceases to amaze the amount of people on the side of the road at the Tour de France. The estimated figures suggest that each year there's roughly 14 million people that stand on the side of the road to watch the Tour. It's the biggest attendance of any sporting event in the world. And one of the greatest things about it is completely free. And despite the fact that the riders appear to just brush past so quickly, there's a lot of entertainment before it with the publicity caravan. Anthony Chateau just controlling that main field as he's got the advantage of the breakaway group of 5, back down to 3 minutes and 30 seconds. It just keeps it enticing for the teams of the sprinters to start to do the chasing. The Breton flag off to the left. They've had a couple of stages up in the Breton region being hosted there this year. Of course, stage 4 went there to the Mer de Bretagne, where it was Evans that got the win ahead of Contador and Vinokourov. It's the Vendée region, just to the south of Brittany, that have really got the most to cheer about so far. Hosting the big Grand Depart and their team Europcar, with Thomas Voeckler in that yellow jersey, and also the performance of Pierre Rolland so far throughout this year's Tour. Pierre Rolland himself, riding in support of Thomas Voeckler, has moved up to 14th place overall at 9 minutes and 20 seconds down. Well, if you have just joined us, here's a reminder of the breakaway group. The man sitting at the back is Mikalik Native, Olympic Games gold medalist from Athens in 2004 from the Katusha team. Just in front of him is Michael Delage from FDJ, who's the best placed rider in this move, but he's almost an hour and 50 minutes down. It's then Anthony de la Place wearing number 213, Samy Dumoulin just in front of him, the shortest rider in the race at 159 centimetres tall. It's then Nicky Terpstra for the Dutchman in the blue quick-step colours, just swinging off from the front to head to the back and take a little bit of a rest.
In the spirit of Tour de France, it's the Avanti Plus Yellow Jersey bike sale with a huge range of great deals on all bikes in store. Plus, to mark the great race, you can pick up this limited edition Avanti Cadent road bike for just $1,999, or the Avanti Cresta women's road bike, also just $1,999. Both bikes are full carbon and come with a free matching riding kit. The Avanti Plus Yellow Jersey bike sale. All our bikes in all our stores on sale now with finance options available for a limited time only.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Morning.
That time of year again. Oh, it's going to be all right.
When South Australia hosts the Santos Tour Down Under, it's more than just a leg on the UCI World Tour. It's a festival of cycling that comes to life right across the state. Over one massive week of celebrations. The Santos Tour Down Under. Take the ride of your life.
At HTC, we're always looking to you for inspiration. That's why we created the HTC Desire S, so you can glide effortlessly through life. The HTC Desire S with HTC Sense is available exclusively from Telstra, glide into a Telstra store to see the HTC Desire S in action.
The widely acclaimed cookbook Southeast Asian Food is out now. With a reputation for being the authority on Southeast Asian food, this newly updated edition explores the flavours of each region's unique cuisine. From Thai salads to Indonesian curries to Malaysian sambals, with a variety of easy-to-follow authentic recipes, this is a must-have for all food lovers. Southeast Asian Food Cookbook, out now at Dymocks and retailers.
Moving right along in search of good times and good news. With good friends you can't lose. This could become a habit. Opportunity knocks once, let's reach out and grab it.
Yeah!
Together we'll nab it.
We'll hitchhike, bus, or yellow cabin.
Cabin?
Moving right along. Footloose and fancy free.
Getting there is half the fun. Come share it with me.
Moving right along.
We'll learn to share the load.
We don't need a map to keep this show on the road.
Hey, the song is sounding better, Fuzzy.
The sprinters chase. And then when we were in the Pyrenees, stages like, well, yesterday particularly, and then also to Luzardi-Den, he was very conservative in the way he used his riders. He saved Pierre Rolland for the final climb, and he looked to Leopard Trek. You've got one of the big favourites. Frank is sitting just behind me overall. You do the chasing if you want the yellow jersey. He's ridden brilliantly, Thomas Voeckler. You can see just off to the right, it's Just Postuma for the Leopard Trek team coming up to the front, but not to do any chasing, just to stay out of trouble, to keep those Schleck brothers protected. Precisely the same happening over at BMC Racing, whilst Alberto Contador will be hoping that his men will have a little bit better form this time around as compared to what they had in the first phase of the race with the crosswinds. Matteo Tosato will be the man to do the job today, you would expect, for the Spaniard. It's Bernhard Eisel in third position, the Austrian on that team. He's really the captain on the road, the man that calls the shots, having the conversation with Thomas Voeckler, no doubt, just saying, OK, fair enough, understand your position. Peter Vellet's off to the left with that right knee bandaged up. And it's Mark Renshaw to the right. The conversation continues. They've gone into caucus. Let's see what they come back with. Before the start of the stage, HTC High Road would have been well aware that this is the sort of responsibility that would have been cast upon them. One of the advantages they've got, Tony Martin, the rider with the yellow glasses that you could see there just momentarily, his hopes for the overall classification have faded away, so he will contribute to the chasing today. He did plenty of that in the first week as well, however. Sandy Casari's won 3 stages in his career so far at the Tour, but the French yet to open up their account at this year's Tour. 45 Frenchmen starting the race. I've said it a couple of times, just 2 Norwegians. The Norwegians have won 2 stages, led just about everything. And the French, well, their hopes are all resting on the shoulders of Thomas. Sandy Casar, incidentally, was third on stage 9 of this year's Tour, which was won by Luis Leon Sanchez. Last year, those two men were in a breakaway together that went into Saint-Jean-de-Maurienne, and it was Sandy Casar that won on that occasion, ahead of Luis Leon Sanchez. So they spend plenty of time together in breakaway groups. Certainly know how to mark each other's moves. It's a beautiful old church that we're now getting the chance to take a look down upon. Dates back to the 12th century with this breakaway group of 5. Still 3 minutes ahead up the road, heading to Montpellier. Let's go across now to Paul Sherwin and Phil Liggett.
Thank you very much indeed, Matt. And we're in for a good day of racing, I think, today. The wind, as you say, is cross to tail. It's going to push the race on a bit. They've gone through 43.5 kilometres average for the first 2 hours. And let's begin immediately with our tour of the cathedrals.
Well, why not? This is the Cathedral of Saint-Nazaire, originally a 10th century cathedral, destroyed by fire during the sacking of Béziers in 1209. During Simon de Montfort's campaign against the Cathars. It was rebuilt between the 13th and 15th century.
As we catch up with Mikel Delage tapping out the rhythm on the front, one of the, and I think today he'll become the man who's escaped from the field more than anybody else this year. We've done about 2,500 kilometres in the Tour de France, and this man has been in the lead for just on 800 of them in one small break or another. He just will not say no to the early morning attack. He's had nothing to show for it yet, but he's always up there trying. Good for him. 3:11 the gap.
Yes, everybody looking for that breakaway, hoping for the day when the breakaway will survive. Well, it's survived on a couple of occasions, but those have been through the big mountain passes. There are only 2 days left, in my estimation, for the sprinters in this year's Tour de France. Today is one of them on the road into Montpellier. And the next stage for the sprinters is right away to the end of next week on Sunday, when the race goes on to the Champs-Élysées. So if you're a sprinter, if your name is Mark Cavendish, Andre Greipel, or even Tyler Farrar, the American sprinter, you've got to drag your body right the way through the Alps to have a chance of being the fastest sprinter on the block. That was a very quick glimpse we just got there as we winged by. That's a very famous windmill in this part of the world, and that was the Mill on the Rock, and one of the rare windmills in this area, and it has been restored fully to operate, and it was restored in the year 2000. There it is, just over to the right hand side. You get a chance to see we're really now very much in the heart of the Languedoc. We've just moved across into the Département of the Hérault. As you look down on this mill, it was situated on the top of a limestone rock looking over Saint-Chinin, and offers a panorama of the valley of Menazobre.
So as the sails turn on the windmill, not wind power driven, I hasten to add, but the wind is certainly blowing today.
Yeah, one of the very rare serial windmills in this area. This area much more renowned for its vines and its Languedoc vine. The white wine and rosé wine is a very prominent wine in this part of the world. This 5-man breakaway once again, Phil, taking the normal recipe out of the agenda, getting away very early on after just 2 kilometres. But they have never been given any freedom at all. In fact, they hardly ever reached the 4-minute advantage mark. The main field are always under control of either Europe car of Thomas Voeckler or under the white jerseys of HTC High Road. And the Provence, and we're not quite right in the heart of the Provence, but this area here, the region that we're going through, does have a feeling of the Provence here this afternoon. This is the Département of the Hérault.
Well, look at the crowd here. We're passing through the town of Saint-Chinian, and a massive crowd. The whole town still turned out. The Tour de France is passing through our town today, and they're enjoying the occasion. It's a Sunday in France, and if it's a Sunday in July and the Tour's passing through, that is a major occasion. Everybody's on holiday in France now. They have a specific part of July. It's known as the big holiday season here in France, so everybody enjoying the occasion.
Kind of putting it into perspective a little bit, it was way back in the year 826 AD that Louis le Pieux, or the Pious, allowed the Benedictine monks to settle on these lands, and the monk Durand, he built a monastery here which he dedicated to Saint Agnan.
Well, here we go as we leave the town of Saint-Chinian. Next stop will be at Pierreux, or we're just past nearby Pierreux. We don't go through the town centre. That is literally just down the road here. I think that might be it on the right, but we stay on the ridges at the moment, down over the left there. This is absolutely beautiful area of France again, in the department number 34, which is known as the Hérault. Well, at the moment, the stage is looking pretty routine. Early morning breakaway, although they started at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. 5 riders going clear after 2 kilometres. We're now
99 kilometres from the finish, but they haven't let them go, Paul. They're riding very fast in that peloton, limiting the attack to 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, I think the reason is, Phil, that the sprinters realise it's the last chance until they get to Paris and the Champs-Élysées that they've got a chance of getting themselves a stage victory. It's extremely important today for Mark Cavendish to try and get some more points in that competition, because over the next few days, as we take our little incursion into the Alps, he will have a hard time getting any points at all. Just quickly noticed there, that was the windmill of the rock that we just went past, waving by as the riders start the descent. And if you're into geology, by the way, there's a lot of limestone outcropping in this part of the world.
And that windmill actually sits on the limestone cliff here, restored fully in the year 2000. As you can see, it was in pretty good working order. Now we're coming off the top of the limestone rocks at the moment as the peloton's descending now down into the town of Saint-Chinian. The breakaway's just gone through. There is an enormous crowd waiting for the Tour today as they pass through this town. And the peloton itself is holding on to that lead, which is now out to just over 3 minutes now. A familiar sight at the front, HTC High Road, the team of the green jersey of the Tour de France, Mark Cavendish. Obviously the order's gone out not to allow this breakaway out of reach. It is a difficult wind at times today. The race could split under the pressure, so they've got to be a little bit cautious in HTC High Road if they want to take Mark to the line. And we don't know, of course, how he's come through the Pyrenees, where, he's a sprinter and he gets a bit of a battering in those high mountains. And today it might have blunted his legs a little bit, but I get the feeling, Paul, it won't be the case.
Well, I think Mark Cavendish is the kind of rider who knows exactly how to look after himself through the mountains. He's got a lot of teammates who are dedicated just to encouraging him over the mountain passes. But a little bit of psychological warfare going on, possibly, Phil, between himself, Philippe Gilbert and Jose Joaquim Rojas. So those two riders accusing him of hanging on to the team car to get himself through the mountains. Cavendish's answer to that, well, I seem to be one of the most filmed and photographed riders in the peloton, so how do you think I'm going to get away with it? But the thing about a rider like him, Phil, he'll respond to that with a little bit of anger and try and show somebody a clean pair of wheels on the way to the finish.
Well, those sort of things inspire a sprinter to even greater heights. That was the Sky Pro Cycling team's Christian Knies, who's just dropped to the back there. And there's another one going back there as well. They have a white jersey to defend now on Team Sky after the Pyrenees ended yesterday. Rigoberto Urán, the new rider from Colombia, and a new youngster who has clearly a lot of climbing prowess, is now defending that young leader's white jersey.
Yeah, the Colombian rider Rigoberto Urán was brought into Team Sky basically to look after Bradley Wiggins in the high mountain passes. Wiggins, everybody felt, had a very good crack at the top 3 finish in the Tour de France this year, and why not a possible top step on the podium. Rigoberto Urán currently sits in 11th place overall. He is the best young rider in the Young Riders competition. He's 7 minutes and 55 seconds down on Thomas Voeckler. Just looking down here, we've just gone through the small town of Saint-Chinian. And Saint-Chinian is one of the largest appellations of the Languedoc wine. It produces 130,000 hectolitres of wine during each year, and the majority of that is actually red wine, a very dry red wine, 89% red wine, 10% rosé and 1% white. Classified as an appellation collective in 1982. 3,300 hectares of wine are actually cultivated in this area.
Well, that should keep Paul showing it instead for the rest of the Tour de France. 2 minutes and 53 seconds is the gap. Now, this tactic seems a little bit strange to me, Paul. They seem to be interested in bringing it back to heel quicker than normal.
Well, I'll tell you why. It's because at 46 kilometres to go, there's the sprint point. I know it's about an hour to go to the finish line, but as far as Mark Cavendish is concerned, these 2 sprint points, today's sprint point and then the final one on the finishing line, may well be the last sprint points that Mark Cavendish can get for a number of days. And he wants to try and build up possibly an unassailable lead over Philippe Gilbert, because Philippe Gilbert has moved up into 3rd place with his little moves through the mountains, and he's only 24 points behind Mark Cavendish at the start of the day, and that's, I think, why we're seeing this move coming from Cavendish's team.
Yeah, I think you're right, because we're actually just a little over an hour from that sprint point today, because they are going very, very quickly. 95 kilometres could be covered in 2 hours today quite easily by these riders. So they're holding it, and they'll try and close it, because, as you say, Cavendish wants those sprint points. He's clearly going for the green jersey now, having won 18 stages of the Tour de France and never won the green jersey, as in fact no British cyclist has. he can't ever think of retiring from the Tour at such a level of sprinting without having won what is the sprinter's prime target.
Well, Phil, no British rider has ever won 18 stages of the Tour de France either. But I have to say, I listen to the French radio every night when we're travelling from A to B, and I just can't get over the fact that the French have got it in their mind that Mark Cavendish is not going to finish the Tour de France. They keep saying, oh, well, he's just in here to win the early sprints and he'll disappear when we get through the mountains. But last year he finished the Tour de France and finished the final stage. The year before that, he finished the Tour de France and won the final stage. So I'm not quite sure where their argument comes from.
No, neither am I. But sometimes French journalists do amaze me if they're watching the same race as we are, because of what they write next day in the papers. I think they've got to fill a lot of space, unlike perhaps we have to. 2007 was Mark's first Tour de France, and that was the race he wanted to ride because it started in London, but he got such a rough ride. I think he spent as much time sitting on the floor when he found that it's quite a rough place to be in the Tour de France. So he didn't finish on that occasion. He abandoned after a week of racing, but now he finishes all of the time, and he's won twice on the Champs-Élysées, and he wants to make it 3 times.
Oh, he certainly does. So same recipe as well for HTC High Road. Danny Pate on the front, former under-23 time trial champion of the world, followed by Lars Bak. Lars Bak had a very good ride through the mountains because in the stage of the Tour de France that went over the Aubisque, he was actually in the breakaway and ended up getting himself a very fine 4th place finish. This bodes into the hands of Thomas Voeckler. You can see there Voeckler in the yellow jersey riding in about 20th position. Extremely happy with his team. Says he's very motivated by the fact that the team have risen to the occasion, and Team Europcar is a team which got into the Tour de France as a wild card.
Well, at the moment the riders are hitting 50 kilometres an hour as they pick up this tailwind. So as they continue, there's a diagonal line for a slight change of direction on the road, and you see the wind also has changed. It's gone across now, coming in from the right of our picture and sweeping right down that echelon line of riders.
So that's a nice perfect line at the back of the line in the green jersey, green helmet. That's Mark Cavendish. And he's obviously asked these guys to come forward. They've got 2 minutes 44 seconds arrears on a 5-man breakaway group, and that 5-man breakaway group is Nicky Terpstra of Holland, Michael Delage of France, Sami Dumoulin, a sprinter from France, and Cofidis. Russian rider Mikhail Ignatiev, and the final French rider, the youngest rider in the Tour de France as well in the breakaway, Anthony de la Place. But it's a question of swapping turns. This is the recipe. They're going to try and control this race and pull it back together before they get to the finishing line. We know that Bob Stapleton, the owner of HTC High Road from San Luis Obispo in the United States, is here on the Tour de France this afternoon. He's been looking to try and pull himself in a team sponsor, a new sponsor, to keep that team together. And maybe in the next couple of days there will be some interesting announcement. Although I know for certain there'll be a lot of riders looking at, a lot of teams looking at the riders in that race to try and poach them for next season. And although the transfer season, the official transfer season in cycling is September, October time, if you don't sign your contract during the Tour de France, you're left a little bit concerned.
92 kilometres to go. The gap is at 2:45, so the leaders are also enjoying this tailwind also at the moment. This is Ryder Hagedal who's come to the back. The Canadian cyclist on the Garmin Cervelo hasn't quite lit up the road like he did last year, but he's been a very, very strong team man to have.
32nd in the overall standings. He's lost 23 minutes and 43 seconds so far, but he actually has had a slightly different role in the Tour de France this year because he's been leading the team out in the sprints. He's been looking after Tommy Danielson in the big mountain passes, so that takes a little bit of strength away from you, and it's a question of who's in the best form at the time when you come to the Tour de France. Last year there was absolutely no doubt at all as we look at the wind here ruffling the long Languedoc grapevines.
Yes, the helicopter, I hope, flies high enough not to blow the grapes off as he picks up the height there, because they're picked around August, September time, so they're starting to get nice and juicy now as we continue to walk in. This looks like one of the abbeys, Paul.
Well, this is the Chateau of Cassin that we're looking at down here. And we're cruising around. The Chateau Abbey of Cassin was founded in 1080 by the Prior Giraud, who lived from 1070 to 1123 and gave the monastery its fame. Donations were actually given by the local aristocrats from the region, and they flowed in to build this great abbey.
I wonder if you ever met Friar Tuck from Robin Hood. What do you reckon?
Probably not. Friar Tuck was quite a good lad. He looked after Robin Hood, and he took the wasn't it? They took the money from the rich and gave to the poor, and had a good time doing it.
It depends on which fable you read. Some said actually Robin Hood was a very bad man, but I don't know the answer to that one. Anyway, as we get a good look here at the Chateau Abbé de Cassin, the peloton are just arriving into the feed, not the peloton, the leaders are just arriving into the feed zone, which means we're hitting the 90 kilometres a point still to go in the race today. I must say that is rather nice as we go back to the heads here of Danny Pate, followed there by Lars Bak and HTC High Road, and Bernie Eisler normally rides very close, as he did throughout the Pyrenees, alongside Mark Cavendish, to make sure he got no ideas about getting off in the mountains, and Bernie got him through again in the Pyrenees.
Yes, he paced him through, he talked to him, he nurtured him. Unless you've actually been a professional bike rider and you've been in the Tour de France, it's very difficult to understand what it's like, Phil, trying to get through the mountains. That was the end of the feed zone for the leading group of 5 riders. Feed zone is at 90.5 kilometres to go on today's stage, that's around about 55 miles of racing.
Peloton, again, the wind has reduced them into a very compact group, leaving it just to the team to take. Now, the actual sprint of the day, which carries all these points before we get down to the real finish of the day for the prestigious stage win, comes at the town of Montagnac, and we hit that at 46.5 kilometres to go, at approximately half distance of what we have left now, 90 kilometres to go. And that is where we expect to see Cavendish maybe racing from the pack for first place there, because I think they'll want those 5 riders back. Well, again, they're still looking here at the pace being set by the team of Mark Cavendish. You can spot the green jersey at the end of the long line of white jerseys. This is very much a team on these flat stages of all for one and one for Cav.
Pretty interesting. This is, by the way, Phil, is an area where the Tour de France has designated the riders can throw out the rubbish that they don't want. And after the Tour de France has gone by, they actually have a special team to come by and pick up all the rubbish, empty bottles, empty musettes or excess food, and they discard it.
Yeah, and what's more, after about a week of this, the organisers actually issued a communique to thank all the cyclists for actually obeying the instructions of the organisation to keep France clean. Because everybody is environmentally conscious now. Even on the mountains, there are many plastic bags all the way up for the spectators to put their rubbish into the plastic bags, which is excellent to see. This is the beautiful river Orbe at the moment.
Yeah, short river, 136 kilometres long, and it flows out into the Mediterranean. And you might just notice the main field just charging through the town there. As we go back to the leading group of riders, you can see the winds coming again to crosswinds, but this time they're coming from the right-hand side. It's a very dangerous part of the world to race in, and these winds, as they swing around, can push the riders along at 50 kilometres an hour. They can swing around to be a headwind and have riders looking for the smallest gears possible to ride into that headwind. But the 5 leaders very safely through the feeding zone.
No problems for the leaders. 2:42 is the gap, so the chase by HTC is holding them. They're not going anywhere at all at the moment. And as you can see here, a massive crowd on the roads of the Tour de France. You can't get lost today. Look at that. There is no other way to go but left. And once they've turned left, of course, yet another change of wind direction. But basically, we are going from the southwest corner, and we're tracing a course up into the east today. Northeast, in fact, so it's going to be crosswind for much of the day.
Début de ravitaillement, the start of the feeding station for the main field. Interesting to note that the Leopard Trek riders are being very present as we move into the final part of the Tour de France. A lot of people questioning their tactics. I think the tactics are good. Keep hitting Alberto Contador as hard as you can, and one day or another see if you can find a weakness in his armour. Because if the Schleck brothers, who are both pretty much climbers, wait until the final time trial, well, it's no game. It's either Cadel Evans who will win this Tour de France, or possibly Alberto Contador, although he needs time back on Evans.
Yeah. I think they tried what I would call plan A, and it hasn't really worked for them. So we'll see what plan B is when we get into the Alps. The trouble is they're complaining the other projected favourites aren't attacking. Well, the answer is, why should they, when the 2 brothers have advertised in newspapers well before the Tour what they were going to do to the Tour de France when they got here. They advertised the fact that they were going to try and win the race. So the boys are just waiting to see exactly what they are going to do to try and win the Tour. If it doesn't work, they should watch out.
Yeah, I agree. And for the moment, Cadel Evans really doesn't have to do anything at all. He just has to sit there, because when you start to analyse the overall standings, Cadel Evans is lying in third place overall. Theoretically, he should be able to beat Thomas Voeckler in the individual time trial by that 2 minutes. Certainly by 15 to 20 seconds, he can wipe out Frank Schleck, and everybody else is behind him.
It's a great position, and that's the way it's been so far. I know for Australians, of course, they hope that's the way it stays, and Cadel will finally seal his win next Saturday in the time trial, and that would be the first ever victory in the Tour de France by Australian. Cadel has twice finished second and twice lost this race by just a few seconds. Very, very frustrating for the man who started out life as a mountain biker, an exceptionally good mountain biker, to say the least. World Cup winner in mountain biking.
World Cup winner on a number of occasions. Just looking there, 213, that was Anthony de la Place, the youngest rider in the Tour de France this year. Joined there on the far side, Niki Terpstra. That's Samy Dumoulin. He won a stage of the Tour de France a couple of years ago. He is a sprinter, but in fact he won his stage in the Tour de France in a breakaway on the road into Nantes. And on the front, Michael Delage. 1-3-3, been extremely aggressive in the Tour de France so far, been on the breakaway on a number of occasions, and Mikhail Ignatiev is the rider in the red and white jersey of Team Katusha, a team which has come to the Tour de France this year completely made up of Russian riders. That was their desire, and obviously everybody's getting out to support the Tour de France this afternoon in any which way they can. Very much a holiday atmosphere as we go across the south of France. Over to the right-hand side of the road, as for the majority of today's stages, is the Mediterranean, and that's where this wind is coming from. And when you look at the main field stretching that very long line, that gives you the indication, although this is not a hard chase, there is a certain amount of pressure being applied to the peloton by HTC High Road. That's Lars Bak on the left-hand side. Bernie Eisel, the brains of the organisation, the brains of the squad, the master tactician when it comes to organising the lead-out, the chase. He's the man who calls it on the road. In the team cars, it's a combination of Rolf Aldag, the German who rode the Tour de France 11 times, Alan Piper, a Tour de France rider, and Brian Holm. And if you get a chance to see the movie Chasing Legends, it's a very interesting movie put together following pretty much basically Team HTC in the Tour de France a couple of years ago, with lots of inside car, inside the team meetings, a lot of behind-the-scenes information. A very good documentary to watch, about an hour and a half long, and it goes by extremely quickly.
Hollywood busted? The motorcycle flips up in the air, end over end. Bad time for the Nazi.
One of the things we want to know is how fast can we poke a flagpole?
What type of rope won't break when you make a break for it?
We got 100% human hair, toilet paper rope, and bed sheet.
And it's Bear's greatest hits. To survive in any extreme environment, you must get your priorities right. High up that list, here's water. Mythbusters and a Man vs. Wild special from 7:30 Monday.
In the spirit of Tour de France, it's the Avanti Plus Yellow Jersey Bike Sale with a huge range of great deals on all bikes in store. Plus, to mark the great race, you can pick up this limited edition Avanti Cadent road bike for just $1,999, or the Avanti Cresta women's road bike, also just $1,999. Both bikes are full carbon and come with a free matching riding kit. The Avanti Plus Yellow Jersey Bike Sale. All our bikes in all our stores on sale now with finance options available for a limited time only.
It's the world's greatest cycling event, and SBS is proud to announce Skoda, Avanti Plus, HTC and IG Markets as its broadcast partners for the 2011 Tour de France.
Every year, your tax return gets more and more complex. Before you get caught in the storm, come in and see our tax specialists.
And hold our large heads high.
the buffalo or die.
The order was given to turn cows to whoppers, enforced by the might of 10,000 coppers. But on the horizon, surrounding the shoppers, came the deafening roar of chickens in choppers.
We will fight for bovine freedom and hold our large heads high. We will run free with the buffalo or die. Cows with guns.
Yeah, but you've got to bear in mind that, of course, at the intermediate sprint point, Philippe Gilbert will not feel very confident that he can actually rival Mark Cavendish. So he feels happy having at least the major points from 20th for first place down to 5th place finish being taken away by a breakaway group. So a lot of tactics unfolding. It's a fairly complicated sport, the sport of professional cycling sometimes, because one man's tactic is another man's derision. Right into the town now. This is Mervielle-les-Béziers. A small little town on the race route at 83 kilometers to go to the finish. And in fact, the name of this town is it's a very old town. The name of the town comes to the Latin plural Muri Vetuli, which actually means the old walls, because it was originally a walled city.
Well, that surely could apply to most of the villages in France, because they're all old walls, I think. It's such a beautiful area, especially down here, as we're in the area now of the Camargue. The world champion, as we look down there, we've got 5 riders clear. We're racing through the plane trees. We're just about to leave the town of Mervielle-les-Béziers at the moment. 3 minutes 2 seconds the gap. And just thinking of the world champion there, Paul Thor-Hushovd had that wonderful win last week in the mountains, and he's a sprinter, and I'm sure he'll be looking to perhaps help Tyler Farrar to win today, or even win for himself.
Well, I think it's actually a very complicated sprint finish today, Phil, because just looking at the race route on the way in towards the finish, it's left, right, up, down, round the corner, another roundabout on the left, roundabout on the right. If I was a sprinter, I'd be just a little bit reticent about fighting to stay in the first 10 to 15 places, because it will be a rip-roaring finish.
Well, that rip-roaring, I think, is the absolute description, because they have a roaring tailwind up the home straight, and that is going to make it extremely quick. So I hope they put the very highest possible gears on for the sprint finish today. They are going to need them, because I would suspect that we will have a sprint finish at around 65, maybe even 70 kilometers an hour.
Yes, well, the thing that I think to bear in mind, a lot of the teams nowadays, with the advent of cellular telephones and internet and everything else, and the ability to send backwards either video or photographs by mail, is a lot of the teams, they have their experts on the sprint come to the finish and scope it out, because sometimes they don't actually trust the race diagram towards the finish. A lot of riders have been caught out by the race diagram. And I know, for example, Mark Cavendish, he uses Eric Zabel, who won the green jersey in the Tour de France on 6 occasions, to come down and talk about the sprint towards the line.
So looking now at the Chateau de Mervielle.
Yeah, there's very little known about this castle. The most important thing is that a lot of modifications were carried out on it between the 17th and 18th centuries, and it was sold off in 1806 in several batches to the municipality, who finally bought it all out in 1850, but the clock was placed in the bell tower in 1887.
And there's a beautiful shot of that clock as well. They actually moved the church entrance. It's built in stone from 3 regions of France: Laurens, Fougères and Beaucaire.
So anyway, as we look, you can just see that's a beautiful town there. As you look in the central part of the town, as the main field there are circumnavigating the very narrow streeted parts of the middle of the Merviel-les-Béziers. You can see that it's quite a magnificent part of the world. The Tour de France is being celebrated in this region by a huge crowd that's turning out. I suppose everybody's taking a day off work as we move along. Oh, I forgot it's Sunday. A great day to have a stage, and it's always a great celebration when the Tour comes down to the southern part of France. The weather normally is good. We were told today that the weather was going to be atrocious, and when we came to the commentary position in the early part of the day, the sky was not dark grey. It was absolutely pitch black, and we even had to put the lights on to begin with. It seems to have cleared up now. The clouds are looking to be fairly high in the sky, and the riders are looking forward to the second rest day of this year's Tour de France, and that comes up tomorrow as the riders spend their day dispatched around the various corners of the département of the Drôme. 1:57, and there he is once again. David Moncoutier gets a lot of publicity for Team Cofidis. He actually got himself into second place in the stage into Lourdes. He was in that long breakaway with Thor Hushovd, who got himself the victory on that occasion. So leaving Merviel-les-Béziers behind us, we head off now down towards the outskirts of this town, and of course into the wide open plains, which could be very precarious with the crosswinds blowing and howling.
Very exposed racing today. The tailwind blowing up the finishing straight is a raging gale, I would call it, just at the moment. I think it's only because of the wind. It is not raining. The cloud is blowing away, but it looks very, very heavy across the Mediterranean today. And the peloton all leaving the work just to one team, which is HTC High Road. Now it looks as though we've got an Astana rider here. I don't quite know where he's wandering off to, but it looks to me as though it is Andrei Grifko. Well, he's gone out the peloton. This is Grifko, and he's gone and broken clear of the field. All of a sudden, they've gone right across the road. Nobody's reacted to him. The wind by the perfect diagonal on the head of the peloton indicates from your television it's coming around about 5 to midnight, the wind, and it's going right across the nose of that peloton, forcing that diagonal line.
Well, Phil, you want me to explain this breakaway to you tactically?
Yes, please do. I can't wait.
I can't, actually,
Along
because
with our 2 million viewers.
I would just have to put this down to being an Andrei Grifko move, and that's on page 176 in the Race Tactical Handbook. If you're a good individual time trialist, the race is going along at 50 kilometres an hour,
and he tries to ride off the
150 metres off the front of it. Not a brilliant idea.
Well, he's not an unknown cyclist. In fact, he's a very, very good cyclist. But you're right, it's really a no-brainer at the moment. Why would you ride off the front of the peloton on a straight road like this? And the peloton's probably asking the same question, because Grifko, being a foreign rider here, he's the Ukraine rider. I think he just disappeared into the bushes. Maybe that was the answer, Paul. What page would that one be on?
That's on page 172, subsection 3, paragraph 4.
Right, okay, he'll be back shortly. We were talking stories on the Tour not long ago, Paul. We used to have some great riders in the race, characters in the 50s and 60s, who would do something like that and get completely out of sight by maybe 2 or 3 minutes, then hide completely and come out of the field when the peloton has gone by and sit at the back and watch the riders chase them, wondering where they'd gone to. And in fact, they were sat in the peloton all the time.
Not the sort of thing that I would do. However, I did have a teammate, and in the old days, around about the 1970s and 80s, it was actually a good thing to finish last overall in the Tour de France. A position known as the Lanterne Rouge, the man carrying the red lamp at the back. And in fact, there was a big battle by Philippe Tenier, who wanted to finish last overall, because if you did, the winners of the Tour de France and the winners of the stages got a chance to participate in the post-Tour de France exhibition races. And if you were the Lanterne Rouge, you earned yourself a large number of contracts. And on a number of occasions, Philippe Tenier, who was battling a guy by the name of Gerhard Schoenbacher, who actually organises the Crocodile Trophy in Australia these days, a very long mountain bike race. They used to hide in the ditch to make sure they lost 15 or 20 minutes on the running towards the finish to try and battle out last place overall.
Who finished last?
Tenier did it on one occasion and Gerhard Schoenbacher on 2 occasions. However, the organisation of the Tour de France didn't like that at all, so they came up the following year with another rule. From stage 10 to 15 or 17, the last man of the race every day was eliminated from the race. Now, That was pretty awful because I was about 6 from the end.
I do remember that rule. I didn't know why it was caused. I was always concerned because I was commentating, as usual, for British television. I'm wondering if you would ever get through to the finish because they get nipping off the last man. But she managed to survive. Onward we go with HTC High Road still holding field. 2:45 the gap now. We're getting closer to the sprint at Montagnac.
Yeah, the sprint at Montagnac. Well, I can see that Team HTC High Road want to try and pull it back by that point. In fact, there are 10 points available for the 6th rider to cross the line, but I think Mark Cavendish will be a lot happier if he could pull this breakaway back and have a crack at getting himself a maximum 20 points. But they have, in fact, reduced that advantage a fraction to 2 minutes and 38 seconds. But what this chase is doing, it's actually putting a lot of pressure onto the shoulders of HTC High Road. I suppose the big advantage, Phil, is doing a lot of work today. Tomorrow is a rest day, and they have got a chance to recover. And they're not going directly into the mountains after the rest day, although it's not definitely a race for the sprinters. The Road to Gap has got a second category climb along it, which will be part of Mark Cavendish's allergy problems.
Yeah, but you know, it's not far before the finish, so we should get a breakaway on that day. It's a gentle entry into the Alps as we race down to Gap from Saint-Paul-Trois-Châteaux, but after that it is far from gentle. We have a stage finish on top of the giant Col de Galibier, and that stands at over 2,500 metres high. It will be the highest finishing point the Tour de France has ever attempted. And then, just for good measure, the next day we go racing over the same mountain again.
Yeah, I think that's where we're going to see the turning point in the Tour de France this year, because when you start to get up to 8,500 and 9,000 feet, or as you said, 2,600, 2,700 meters in altitude, you really are getting up into rarefied air, and that's when it's going to be the difference between the men and the boys. Now, this is a very interesting chateau here as we start to move in. This looks to me, Phil, as if this is the Chateau of Margon. And it's rather an interesting chateau because folklore says that the castle's 3 round towers were originally built in the 13th century. And the town of Margon was a former barony in this area, which came directly under the king's orders up until the end of the 16th century.
Well, it's absolutely in superb condition.
But it wasn't at one time, Phil, because it was pretty much damaged during the Revolution. It was partly restored in the earlier 20th century, but nowadays it's been renovated to absolute perfection, and it really is. I mean, the French have done a great job in restoring many of their old buildings and old chateaux to bring them up to modern world standards.
To the left there, you can't quite see the beautiful French-styled garden of water fountains and numerous, well, you can see the regional trees which they've planted. And there's a kitchen garden down there as well, and a bridge over the stream. Can't see the stream, never mind the bridge, but either way, that is superbly renovated.
How much closer are we to finding the miracle cure?
We're in the 21st century. We've got the human genome sequence, and we're still treating cancer with medieval treatments. We cut it out with a big knife, or we poison it with chemotherapy.
I would do absolutely anything to not put somebody else through what I'd been through.
New research is now personalising gene therapy.
And that is going to change cancer research forever.
One step closer to the miracle cure. Tuesday, 7:30 on SBS1.
Innovation. Technology. Design. Scott.
At HTC, we're always looking to you for inspiration. That's why we created the HTC Desire S, so you can glide effortlessly through life. The HTC Desire S with HTC Sense is available exclusively from Telstra. Glide into a Telstra store to see the HTC Desire S in action.
Well, he's obviously had a problem, Muriev. He's come across from one team car to another, and he's moving forward.
Yeah, well, I think the important thing to note here is, Phil, you can see just how fast these cars are going. Now, it doesn't look, if you look at the front end of the peloton, as if these guys are going fast. It looks as if they're setting a nice little tempo, comfortable ride if you're in the main field, just like a ride that a lot of people might do on a Sunday or a Wednesday afternoon. But when you see how hard it is for Dmitry Murevyev from Kazakhstan at the back trying to get into the main field, it kind of puts it into perspective.
Now, is this Ten Dam here at the back of the race? I don't think it is. Yes, it is. It's Lawrence Ten Dam. Now, we saw that spectacular fall yesterday by Lawrence Ten Dam right onto his face. I thought he'd broken his nose. He'd done enough damage, but he got back up. He spent a lot of his night in hospital in Foix last night, and he's had 8 stitches in his nose. You can probably see them just there. But he's a tough man. He got up and he finished yesterday. It was an incredibly bad crash. We were coming down a mountain. He sort of went into the grass, didn't he, Paul? Suddenly he flipped over the handlebars and hit his face on the ground. And I thought he would never get up from that, but he did. And covered in blood, he raced to the finish. Then he went directly to the hospital. He said that on the news this morning that he had 8 stitches in his face, and he spent most of his night in Foix. And then they get up and ride the Tour de France again.
Well, Phil, I said it so many times. I said it for many, many years. You will not do this in any other bike race around the world. But this is the Tour de France. That's what it's all about. If you don't have a broken bone, if you don't have a concussion, if it's only a superficial wound, you want to try and continue. If you cast your mind back, and you commentated on it at the time I was racing in it, Bernard Hinault broke his nose in the Tour de France in Saint-Etienne, and he went on to win the Tour de France. Through the vineyards still, and now starting to pick it up. The goal, we're looking at 71 kilometers to go. The goal for Team HTC High Road is to catch that 5-man leading group before they get to 46 kilometers to go. The gap now has started to come down at around about 83 kilometers to go. It was 2 minutes and 56 seconds. Now it's come down to just tickling the 2-minute mark. And it's BMC Racing. BMC Racing, they're not concerned about sprints or points. They're concerned about Cadel Evans. Cadel Evans, of all of the other pre-race favourites, is in an ideal position, and probably the most ideal position that Cadel Evans has been in since he's been to the Tour de France to try to win it. This is the Tour of Saint-Etienne in the little small town of Puy-Salicon. And it's 1 kilometre away. It's a 10th century Romanesque tower with a very Italian Lombard influence, built right in the middle of the cemetery. It's 26 metres high with sides of 4.3 metres, and it's 5 stories high.
Well, the yellow jersey there of Voigtler. Today it's an unofficial day off. He has to ride the distance, of course, but if they couldn't get their time back in the mountains in the Pyrenees to take that yellow jersey off his shoulders, it's highly unlikely they will get it today. But it's interesting to see that Cadel Evans has sent up now his BMC members. Tactic
is because of the wind, Phil. They're all concerned because this is a very difficult stage because of the wind direction. Once the wind direction changes, the race in the space of 5 kilometres can split into 3 or 4 different groups, and that's why Cadel Evans and Team BMC Racing are being attentive.
Well, there'll be no complaints from Danny Pate, the American rider on the right of the picture there for HTC, because to see another team come up and do a little bit of the work, chasing as well, it's having no effect on the breakaway, I have to say. They're both riding at the same speed just now. 206, 205, keeps on yo-yoing the peloton and the main field. Constant cheers from the roadside. Nice to see the Union flag flying there as well. There's plenty of supporters here, many of them having booked the holidays to cheer home the British prospector Bradley Wiggins. And sadly, Bradley crashed out in the opening few days of the Tour de France with that broken collarbone. And many people now, like we are, wondering just where he would be sitting in the overall classifications after the Pyrenees. And I have to say, I think he would have been sitting pretty high.
I agree, would have been, as his teammates say, Phil, and even riders on other teams say, that Bradley Wiggins was nurturing some of the best condition in his life. And when you're talking about a man that's got 3 Olympic gold medals, I don't know how many World Championship titles, and had already just won the Criterium de Dauphiné, he would have done something extremely special, I think, in this year's Tour de France. And for the rest of his life, it'll be a question of what if. Well, as the main field can see now that they've started to do the job in hand, and they've got that gap down to the 2-minute mark. It's still got to be wiped away in about 20 kilometres. They've got to wipe off a minute for every 10 kilometres of the next 20 kilometres of the race, and that's the important thing for them. Lars back now, the small town of Puy-Salicon. Again, one of these interesting, rather circular villages, and they were built, so as you can see, the circular part of the village is very much like the village we just went through a little while ago, and that was all to do with the protection. As we see Big George Hincapie, quick wheel change there, no panic for him. He's seen it all before. He's seen almost everything in the sport of professional cycling, because George Hincapie this year is participating in the Tour de France for the 16th time, which equals the record of Joop Zoetemelk.
Well, the riders now, we're going around the beauty here of France today, but I have to say this is looking very routine at the moment, Paul. A little breakaway. They're being controlled by HTC. They have the utmost confidence once again in Mark Cavendish.
No, they have the utmost confidence, but they've got a hard chase to pull back, I would say, around about 2 minutes in the next 20 kilometres of racing. That's only 12 miles of racing. That's a tall order, but if any team in the peloton can do it, they will. I don't think Omega Pharma Lotto want to help in the chase at all currently, because what they're thinking about, Phil, is that Philippe Gilbert will not get too many points at the intermediate sprint point. So it's advantage Cavendish, and they're not going to help him.
Well, there is Mark Cavendish in the green jersey, and no British cyclist has taken that home from Paris just yet. There is Andy Schleck taking a bottle off the Swiss champion Fabien Cancellara, sitting in the peloton looking comfortable. Well, we look down here at Cadel Evans now in the pack on the far side. His red BMC colours, always behind his one faithful teammate he loves to ride behind is Michael Shaw. I think I'd like to ride behind him. Look at the size of him.
Well, just a few moments ago, George Hincapie had a flat tyre, a badly timed flat tyre just in the small town of Puy-Salicon, and he now is trying to make his way back into the peloton. Thomas Voeckler looks to be enjoying the Tour de France, and people are starting to say, I wonder whether or not Thomas Voeckler is going to win the Tour de France here this year, because he was very close at the top of the Plateau de Bay. And if they don't have a big battle in the Alps and they take it right the way down to the final individual time trial, it's going to be rolling the dice, I'd have to say.
It will be an incredible time trial, that's for sure, but I can't believe with the terrain which lies ahead. Alpe d'Huez as a finish, the top of the Col de Galibier, the crossing of the Col de Galibier, the Col d'Izoire, the famous climbs of the Alps as we celebrate 100 years within those giant mountains. I can't see the time trial unless it's been one or two riders deciding it. But we'll see. This has been a very, very unpredictable tour. The only predictability is that on a flat stage, HTC High Road start doing all of the work and hope they deliver Mark Cavendish to the finish. It's worked on 3 occasions, failed slightly on the 4th occasion when Andre Greipel, Cavendish's ex-teammate, got the better of him. And that was Andre's first Tour de France and his first stage win. There's the man all of France is talking about now. He's become an absolute hero yet again, Tommy Voeckler, and he's got his team. They've risen to the occasion as well. They've really done well.
Well, you might have noticed Mark Cavendish sitting there in the back end of his teammates. This is what happens at the back. There's George Hincapie in the red shorts there, just moving his way. He's just got back after his flat tyre, and the rider wearing a 183 is Cyril Gauthier, one of the young riders on the squad. And I have to say, just listening to Jean-René Bernadotte the other day, Phil, it's taken him 21 years to build up the team to this level. He started off with a development team, under-23 team. They raced around the world on the international under-23 circuit. Then all of a sudden a sponsor came in, and he's developed that all of the time. And what he finds interesting is it's something which I've always wondered about in cycling, because a lot of the top professional teams, they've got team members spread all over the world, spread all over Europe. And I know that Garmin Cervelo have got the same kind of philosophy to bring the team together so that all the team members live in the same region. Well, that's what happened with Team Europcar. Nearly all of the team members, the mechanics, the masseurs, the doctors, the management, they all come from the Vendée region of France.
Yeah, I think he's done a tremendous job for French cycling, because he's never had huge, rich sponsors who poured millions of euros into a team, so he couldn't always afford the top riders, but he stayed local and he's produced results. Jean-René Bernadotte himself, by the way, had his birthday, his 55th birthday during the Tour de France. He himself rode 10 Tours de France, and he twice finished 6th, and he also finished 5th. He was a very, very good cyclist.
And he wore the yellow
He
jersey
did.
in his first participation in the Tour de France when it actually went up into the Pyrenees. And he won a great stage in the Giro d'Italia when he got away with his teammate Bernardino. Jean-René Bernardo won the stage, and Bernardino went on to take the Maglia Rosa, the pink jersey of leadership, and win the event in the end.
Well, French Sport of Cycling's very pleased. He never lost interest when he retired. Instead, he stayed in as the management level, and the result is he rides today with his team man in yellow, and by the end of this day he'll still be in yellow and taking it to the second rest day. It was the day before the rest day last Sunday when Thomas Voeckler pulled on the maillot jaune.
Well, let's not forget about the 5-man breakaway off the front of the main field, and it's made up of these riders who got away after just 2 kilometers. Nicky Terpstra, the former Dutch national champion, who's on the front just now, followed by Mikhail Ignatiev, followed by Michael Delage, Samy Dumoulin and Anthony de la Place, and they're still holding on stubbornly to this 2-minute advantage.
It's all in for the finals round of the Women's World Cup. With every match a knockout, it's win or go home. The FIFA Women's World Cup Finals on SBS. Visit the World Game website for match times.
Why do sports companies only ever sponsor these guys? Why not sponsor him, her, or even her? At Giant, we think that real riders are the real heroes of cycling. So we're going to officially sponsor 30 of them, with a contract, a brand new bike, and all the gear. One of them could even be you. To get sponsored, just sign up online. And don't worry, if you're not the best rider in the world, you're just what we're looking for.
At HTC, we're always looking to you for inspiration. That's why we created the HTC Desire S, so you can glide effortlessly through life. The HTC Desire S with HTC Sense is available exclusively from Telstra. Glide into a Telstra store to see the HTC Desire S in action.
Hi, I'm Jenny Brocky. What you don't know about Australia's next migrant boom, the ethics of eating meat and revenge. Does it really make you feel good? Join me when Insight returns.
Insight is back Tuesday, July 26.
I'm not off my head. 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 My head, my head, my
A bit further back behind him, next rider in the dark glasses, TJ Van Garderen, followed by Peter Velits, followed by Matty Goss. Matty Goss just looking across there and talking to somebody on his far side, and behind him Mark Renshaw from Bathurst in New South Wales. And as you can see, that's why the riders are riding in that very big diagonal line. This will bring a lot of nervousness into the main field, but not to these 5 riders. The reason why they're riding in a diagonal line like that is because the wind is coming from the left-hand side, slightly diagonally across the road. So when you ride at a 45-degree angle to the rider in front of you, that's the best position to take advantage of the slipstreaming effect. Ignatiev from Russia on the front, 195, rides for Team Katusha. Katusha, the Russian racing team, this year bringing a full complement of Russian riders to the Tour de France, despite the fact that they do have a number of good Italian and Belgian riders on the squad. This year it was a little bit of a question of pride to bring an all-Russian squad, while most of the other teams in the Tour de France nowadays look to have, if they can, a very much more cosmopolitan participation. Except, of course, when you talk about Team Europcar, because every one of the members of Team Europcar is from France.
Well, as we look at the peloton here, Paul, we've got 4 American teams in this race, and just how has American cycling improved? You know, in August this year now, we've got this USA Pro Cycling Challenge, which is really a veritable Tour of Colorado, and that's a hotbed of sport anyway. But, you know, it's a sign of how the sport is pushing all the time in the United States.
Yeah, I think you've got to go back to the pioneers, and most people will think that Greg LeMond was the pioneer of a sport in the United States. But in fact, it was Jonathan Boyer who rode for the ACBB, which was a club out of Paris. He was the first American to ride in the Tour de France, and then he opened the doorways for other riders to follow. And Greg LeMond followed in the traditional routes to get himself across, and he was extremely successful and went on to win the Tour de France.
He would have loved to have raced in his own country in an event like that event in Colorado, that's for sure, in August.
Yes, and after Greg LeMond, it was a question of putting together an American professional team, and the first American professional team to come in was in 1986. And that was Team 7-Eleven, and what a start they had. Alex Steeder getting away, although a Canadian rider, getting away in a breakaway on the first stage of the race and getting himself the overall lead. And it all went to pieces in the afternoon when they had a dramatic crash in the team time trial. But 7-Eleven stayed around for a long time and laid down the foundations for careers like Steve Bauer and Davis Finney, the great sprinter. And, of course, many other riders, including Sean Yates of Great Britain, who went on to great things with another American team, Team Motorola, before now being one of the integral parts of the management at Team Sky from the United Kingdom. Sean Yates, a wearer of the yellow jersey in the Tour de France back in 1994, when the Tour de France went across onto British soil. In fact, strangely enough, and sadly enough for Sean, the race went through a lot of his training grounds in Sussex, and it was the day after the Tour de France went back to France from England that he won himself the yellow jersey. And he was also a winner of a very good individual time trial into Wascal over 62 kilometres, and still one of the top 10 or 12 fastest time trials ever recorded in the Tour de France. Just looking at the skies, and the clouds are nice and high, so hopefully the forecasted rain will not come.
Study emotions as we see that peloton. George Hincapie, the American, in his 16th record equaling Tour de France participation this year, right on the front now. Boy, Cadel Evans is grateful he's on his team, as Lance Armstrong was when George used to ride on his team when the American won the Tour 7 times.
Well, I have to say, I think that's one thing that I've noticed about Cadel Evans, Phil, over these last couple of years, once he's come across to this team, BMC Racing. In the past, he criticised his team as not being strong enough to support him and look after him. But this year, I think, well, these last couple of years, Phil, I think he feels extremely confident and comfortable being on this squad.
Alignan du Vent, the name said to come from that of a veteran of the 7th Roman Legion, I can't say it.
Alignanum.
Thank you very much.
I got 97% in a Latin exam once. And in fact, it was given, apparently, he was one of the members of the 7th Roman Legion. He was awarded the land by the emperor at the time.
Romanesque and Renaissance are the design of the house, or the period of the houses, as we look through the leaders here, now leaving Alignan du Vent. Interesting name from the wind, isn't it? The way the wind's blowing just at the moment.
You just caught my thought right there before I said it.
The crosswind still coming up from now the right side of our picture. This is the peloton. A nice mixture of teams now. It's red and white. In the white corner is HTC High Road. In the red corner is the American BMC squad, who are all for the Australian Cadel Evans. And Cadel sits third now. He's never been outside the top 3 since this Tour de France began over 2 weeks ago.
Well, that sounded like you were starting to announce a boxing match there in the red corner, the green corner, the white corner. Here we go. Well, there will be some fireworks down towards the end anyway. I question whether or not Team HTC High Road now are going to be able to pull back this 5-man lead group. Nicky Terpstra on the front here, the former national champion of Holland, is an extremely good time trial as well. And he's a guy who's got a big background from the track. He was formerly also the national pursuit champion of Holland. He's the big firepower in this breakaway, but they've all worked consistently together. But they've never been given any freedom. They've never been given 5, 6 or 7 minutes advantage. It's all been pegged. Pretty much, first of all, because of Europcar of Thomas Vogler, and then after that because of HTC High Road.
Just looking around, Alignon Devant again here. This Church of St. Martin in between. Interesting to note, the first 14 stages of the Tour de France, give it in miles per hour, 24.9 has been the average. Today, these rides are cracking on at 27 miles an hour.
Well, that's just an indication of the winds that are having that massive effect, and that's what I think the riders are concerned about this afternoon. Not so much when you come into town, there's a bit of respite from the wind, but once you go out into the open lands and into the vineyards and the open maize fields and the cornfields, that's when the wind comes straight across the riders, and it can be very precarious if you're sitting near the back end of the pack.
Well, we're just at the point now, another 5 kilometres, and the riders will be slap bang level with the Mediterranean Sea. We hit sea level completely here, and a couple of ripples. That's where the sprint will come at Montagnac. It will not be completely flat, I don't believe. I haven't seen the sprint point yet. And then they run down towards the finish, and the sprinters should again have their day. 1:46 now. Looking at the head of the peloton here, a lot of switching aheads. All the VIPs are taking time out, probably checking the wine in the Languedoc area before they take off to see the finish. As the peloton speeds by here, the gap is coming down, but just about as they would want to. Under control, but don't want to catch them yet. 1:47.
They might just catch that flag that I was mentioning just there as we whiz past it. That's the flag of Provence, or the Occitan as it was called in its old language. And in fact, there is still a Provençal language in this part of the world.
That was rider Hejidol, the Canadian in the team on Garmin Cervelo, who is stretching out the Pyrenees. There he is. After 3 days in the mountains, he's now just getting rid of a little bit of cramp. I think it's just a routine stretch, that. He might be called into action shortly to look for Tyler Farrar, the team sprinter, who will want to take Mark Cavendish on when they catch those 5 leaders. But we're getting ever so close now. We're only about, I was going to tell you, we're just about 10 kilometres from the sprint now for the green jersey points. These 5 will probably survive the next 10 kilometres and sweep up the major points. But we are looking at the 6th place finish, which will be for 10 points. And there's no doubt Cavendish will have to go for those 10 points. He's running out of good days for the next few days of the Tour after we rest tomorrow because of the mountains. So he'll want to get what he can when he can.
And I want to see the tactics here, because what we've seen in the past is Cavendish and his team have been very clever in actually trying to get in 2nd, 3rd and 4th position to try and get a number of riders between themselves and the others. And you might have noticed that Matty Goss and Mark Renshaw, once they've let out Mark Cavendish for this intermediate sprint, they're kind of holding on. They're not swinging off. They're holding on to try and get 2nd and 3rd to put more points between Mark Cavendish and whoever finishes in the places behind him. But let's not forget that didn't work the other day when Rojas actually beat Cavendish to the line.
Yes, he had a good lead out from Ventoso, his teammate, who's also a pretty good sprinter. It worked on that occasion. These sprints have been a little bit rough and tumble. Ever since we started, riders have been relegated on occasion because of moving off the line in the sprint. Cavendish himself has been on the receiving end and also on the appealing end and won. But the pelotons, that was rather a nasty right-hander there as they came out of that corner around that sign there. So they've done it safely.
You see why you have to be attentive. That's why it's dangerous to sit at the back, because although the riders at the front, they give a signal either verbal or by hand to indicate something in the road. Once that information gets to the back of the pack, it doesn't always get transmitted. It's a little bit sometimes like the Chinese whispers.
Well, they have seen that. 10 kilometres to go, or 6 miles now, so they're going to get a little bit twitchy on the front. They're not going to pull back 1:43, I don't think. They're thinking now of a 6th place finish for Cavendish and 10 points for the green jersey. The boys up front don't affect his overall lead. He will pay very close attention to the whereabouts of Jose Rojas, who's pushing him. He's in second place, and Philippe Gilbert, who basically is a very good sprinter, despite the fact we see him as a sort of stayer. We call a rider who can go away on his own and win stages by himself.
Yeah, I think Philippe Gilbert will try and consolidate or close in on the lead of Mark Cavendish in the mountains, because he's the kind of rider who could get up very well on the stage into Gap, which has a second category climb just before the finish. The Vineyards, the Languedoc, abounding in this area. The main field job at hand. They're not going to catch those leaders before that 10-kilometre has gone by, but for them, they're now starting to concentrate on the finishing line. They want to make sure they get it right. They don't want to burn themselves out for 20 points, but they don't mind burning themselves out for 45 points.
And the kudos of a stage win, of course. There's the concentration. The dark glasses on the right there is Cadel Evans. As he concentrates, he's looked very, very good everywhere he's gone. And there's a new team coming in too here. Johan Gen is bringing up the boys in green, which is the team of Vauclair. The reason probably to keep him out of trouble. If this sprint really does get rough today, they don't want a crash in the middle that might take out the yellow jersey. So they're coming forward really for different reasons. Not for the points, but to stay safe.
In the spirit of Tour de France, it's the Avanti Plus Yellow Jersey bike sale with a huge range of great deals on all bikes in store. Plus, to mark the great race, you can pick up this limited edition Avanti Caden road bike for just $1,999, or the Avanti Cresta women's road bike, also just $1,999. Both bikes are full carbon and come with a free matching riding kit. The Avanti Plus Yellow Jersey bike sale. All our bikes in all our stores on sale now with finance options available for a limited time only. When South Australia hosts the Santos Tour Down Under, it's more than just a leg on the UCI World Tour. It's a festival of cycling that comes to life right across the state. Over one massive week of celebrations. The Santos Tour Down Under. Take the ride of your life.
It's the hardest race in the world.
These boys are just fighting it out.
Experience the hell of the North, cycling's most grueling one-day race through northern France.
This is it. This is Paris-Roubaix. You're going to win it.
Whoa! This is panic stations in Paris-Roubaix. Listen to the crowd.
Disbelief, excitement, all wrapped into one. It was a big moment.
Hell of the North DVD, out now at JB Hi-Fi, DMX and retailers.
So as they continue to charge through the town of Pézenas right now, as the peloton down there, and another example of a massive crowd here who's enjoying the Tour de France. There's the town name, and it looks as though they've got a few candidates for their leaders' jerseys as the Tour unwinds. But right now, one leader's jersey at stake is green, and Mark Cavendish has called his team to the front to try and deliver him for the 6th place, because they're not going to catch the 5 leaders now. He needs 10 points, though.
In the small town here of Pézenas, formerly a stronghold of the Counts of Toulouse, I think all of the people from the Toulousan region have come down here, Phil, because this is once again a phenomenal crowd at the Tour. I don't think they're going to catch these riders. I think it's impossible to catch these rides, and I think that's what was adopted on board the HTC High Road Express there. They said, look, we'll start to see if we can pull them out. If we can do it easily, yes, we'll grab them, we'll go for the 20 points. If not, let's not burn ourselves out, because they know for Mark Cavendish to win stages, he needs the firepower of his team and a good long lead-out train in the run into the finish over the final kilometre, so they're probably going to sacrifice a couple of points.
Well, the nervousness today that we saw in the first week with all of those crashes in the peloton seems to have passed now. They've all got the adrenaline out of their system with 3 days in the High Pyrenees, and we haven't had any problems today, so fingers crossed. They're passing under 5 kilometres to go. 1.5 minutes is the gap, so they won't bridge that in 5 kilometres. So Cavendish, though, will take 10 points because there's nobody up ahead that affects him in this competition. He will keep his eye out for the arrival of Jose Rojas, who has been sprinting well from day one, and also the phlegmatic Philippe Gilbert, the champion of Belgium, who go for anything. And he's also, watch for him, he comes up, he has a black top on his jersey, red and yellow. The Belgian flag is the design of his jersey because he's the current national champion. Just going to the back here, Johnny Hugeland here, who was the hero of our first week. Those wounds of those 33 stitches in his legs when he slammed into that barbed wire fence, courtesy of a television car, and knocked him off. He seems to be recovering now. He's had a rough ride through the Pyrenees, though.
He certainly has had a rough ride. So too, let's not forget Juan Antonio Fletcher, a rider from Team Sky, who on that occasion, on that road down to Saint-Flour, could very easily have been the winner of the stage, and that could have turned his complete Tour de France around. He too is also battling on in the Tour. He's got himself through the Pyrenees. Now the question is, will he survive the mountains of the Alps? 3,000 meters to go for this leading group of 5 riders, and Samy Dumoulin just sitting at the back there, very good sprinter, winner of a stage in Nantes a couple of years ago, Phil, but not as a sprinter, actually on that occasion as a man who survived from a 3-man breakaway.
Yeah, but he had to beat the other 2, which he did with not too much difficulty, and there was an American involved in it that day, Will Fishgorn, who got second, I think, on the stage. But we're now looking at the breakaway here. I'm just wondering whether they're raced for it, but as we tell you every day, it's not just the points, there's also 1,500 euros available, which is around $1,700 or just over £1,000. Depends on the currency you work in. But there, the peloton, the crosswind indicated by the Union Jack on the right, as they come around that roundabout. Always love those pictures, and they all come back together again, and right at the front, still driving the ship, are the men in white for Cavendish.
Well, I'm so glad you said ship, Phil, because the other day somebody gave me a little bit of stick because they said it can only be called the Union Jack when it's out at sea, and it can be only called the Union flag when it's on the mainland. I'm not sure about that, but I'll have to check it out.
No,
but you did qualify
it. Term.
Well, you did qualify it by saying ship.
Thank you very much. Just looking across again the Romanesque wall that we seem to be riding over here at the moment. Looks like it's been there for a while, doesn't it?
The only problem is with my family's naval background, I always grew up with the white ensign.
I thought it'd just be a white flag, but never mind, as we're now seeing HTC High Road continuing to set the pace. Keep an eye on the green. You'll see how he moves around. You'll see how he peels his teammates off as they hit their limit and have to drop back. They want to keep the pace so high now that they make it virtually impossible for the other sprinters to get up alongside. But although that race is only the 6th place, that's the most important sprint here at this point. These are the 5 leaders now, currently being led by the first timer in the Tour de France, Anthony Delaplace, and he's been in a few breakaways this year in the Tour de France.
Youngest rider in the Tour, and that's him just sliding back there, just 21 years of age. He's 22 at the end of this year as Mikel Delage goes forward there. I would expect to see the move come from Samy Dumoulin. There's, as you said, Phil, 1,500 euros at stake, and that's about $2,300. It's
as much as that.
It is 2,000 at the current exchange rate, but it fluctuates an awful lot at the moment.
Minute 30 now. The blackboard is saying there to the riders, so they know it's coming down, and they know they're going to make the sprint. The face of the concentration on the yellow jersey of Thomas Vauclair, but he is not worried about the sprint. He just wants to stay out of trouble. And his favourite pacemaker at this stage of the race is Johan Gen. As we look at gap is a minute 27. We're seeing 1 kilometre to go to the sprint. They haven't come back, nor are they going to before this sprint is enacted. So Mark Cavendish will fight out for 6th place, while these 5 will take all the prize money and the best points.
Well, a new organisation, a new idea from the organisation of the Tour de France was to change the points at classification. Yes, lots of points at the finish of the stages, but also one single point on the course where you can earn yourself points. 20 points for the first rider to cross the line, going down to a single point for 15th place. But there are 5 riders clear, so the main field will be charging up there to try and earn themselves 10 points for the first rider to cross the line. You might notice, Phil, on the left-hand side of the road, the red and black jerseys, very briefly, the red and black jerseys of BMC Racing. Well, they were there to keep Cadel Evans up at the front. That is not a train for the sprinters. That is a train or an organised team making sure that if there is a split as we start to go through the splinting point, Cadel Evans is well placed in the main field.
Keep him out of trouble. And, you know, it looks as though we're going to be sprinting in the tree cover here, so that will negate the wind problem. Not the case when they come to the finishing line. The wind has gone from full-on tail to very slightly cross from the left now as we sit at the finishing line, so it's changing direction slightly. Now watch for number 133. He's the expert in the breakaway. He's been in enough of them. And Samuel Dumoulin, the sprinter who won in Nantes once and finished 4th on the stage to La Grande Motte, not far from where we are now, has just shown them how fast he is. But has he gone too soon as Mikel Delage inches his way forward? And it's going to be very, very close. Where's the line? That's probably... Well, I think Dumoulin got it. Just pipped it on the line there, Samuel Dumoulin, but he misjudged that almost. He's the sprinter here. But Delage isn't amazing. He's the little one on the left there, Samuel Dumoulin. Well,
I think it was Delage.
I'll reserve on that one. We'll go to the photo finish. I hope they have a photo finish at this stage, right? I believe they do.
They do, because it's such an important sprint point, Phil. They do have a photo finish out on the course for this, because it could be this intermediate sprint that decides the wearer of the green jersey in Paris. At 46 kilometres to go, the gap has come down to 1 minute, and still a very long organised train. Look at Philippe Gilbert coming back up there in the jersey. Look at the acceleration going on the right-hand side, trying to get themselves maximum points for Mark Cavendish.
Well, this is what we expected, and it is in fact Rojas, Ventoso, and then Rojas has got the back wheel of Cavendish. Now they've gone up on the inside, they're taking Cavendish there. Rojas is on the right here. He's gone very wide. He's looking at the back wheel of Mark Cavendish. It isn't going to help. Cavendish just checking on the speed here, and they're coming up on him, and he gets the line. It was close, but I'll give that one to Cavendish. But again, they seem to misjudge the length of that sprint.
It was a long sprint, and they started a fair way out. Bernie Eisel coming across now. There's Matty Goss as well. The main field were not too concerned about contesting that sprint point. And it is amazing in this Tour de France, these new rules, how the sprinters are battling for everything. As we look at it from the sky, you can see there Philippe Gilbert. Those are the top 3 riders, Phil, in the competition. 1, 2, 3. Mark Cavendish, Rojas and Gilbert. And I think it's going to go like that all the way down to the Champs-Élysées.
So the point score for them is 10 for Cavendish, 9 for Rojas and 8 for Gilbert. Ventoso gets the 7, the teammate of Rojas. So he gained a couple of points over Gilbert and 1 over Rojas. I think he's more worried about Gilbert with the mountainous racing to come. Now there is the result in the photo finish, and it's pretty clear that Mikel Delage came up on the outside. Dumoulin went too soon, so our master of the breakaway has got himself €1,500 with that sprint.
Well, you know, I like this team. Team FDJ, confirmation coming through there, getting maximum points. FDJ, there is not one breakaway, Phil, in the Tour de France that has gone from the gun that has not had a rider from FDJ in it. And because of that, they're getting themselves money out on the course. They're getting themselves lots of publicity for the team. And, of course, they've had the lead in a couple of the team competitions. They led the King of the Mountains at one stage, and also they led the Best Young Rider competition as well with their new rider, Arnaud Genonson.
Couldn't agree more. They really are taking what they can get out of this race with no obvious winner on the team.
But you can see that acceleration coming down there into the town of Montagnac there has brought the gap down very smartly to the 1 minute mark. And I think maybe we might see just a little bit of slowing in the pacemaking as Philippe Gilbert once again changing his bike. It's a rear wheel flat tyre. He's taking the wheel out, so waiting for the mechanic to come up alongside him. The mechanic's got the wheel ready, drops it in very quickly, pulls the wheel back, switches across a quick release, and Mark Sargent looking on there himself, a former Belgian national champion. and pushing him off, and as well a former rider in the Tour de France. Gilbert in the top gear. That hurts a little bit when you want to get going, but Gilbert knows that there should be no moment of panic for him at this point, because now he's well inside of the convoy of cars, and he should very quickly get into the peloton. But they will remain vigilant at the business end of the peloton this afternoon, because they are still going to be concerned about an acceleration on the running towards the finish. And if the acceleration comes at the wrong time, there will be a split in the peloton, and somebody may get caught out and lose himself 20, 30, 40 seconds on a day when they didn't expect to.
Now they've more or less slowed down since that, so we might see the breakaway go up. They've got it down to 65 seconds. It might just start to rock up a little bit just for the moment. Gilbert's changed his back wheel. He'll be back into the race without any problem. And so far, Mark Cavendish is enjoying his day. He's not showing he's very tired after his journey through the Pyrenees, where Bernie Eisel kept him safe and sound. There's Eisel just being obscured by the rider in the centre.
They're going to take a back seat now, HTC. I think they did the pacemaking to see what would happen. They noticed they couldn't pull it back, but what was interesting, Phil, was they pulled back in the space of about 3 kilometres, half a minute on that breakaway. I think that will make them realise there's a very good chance of pulling the breakaway down before the end and giving the sprinters their last chance to show off their wares before we go to the Champs-Élysées in a week's time.
A week's time, that's the next time they'll sprint. There's a drink being taken by Philippe Gilbert as he cruises back to the main field. There are still 8 teams in the Tour de France. Allez les frogs. That's a bit derogatory, isn't it?
Well, I can only believe that the French...
It, so I suppose it's okay.
Exactly. Allez les grenouilles. Well, at least they've got a sense of humour in this part of the world. But, you know, this is a part of the world that's got a great sense of humour, and especially coming from the rugby supporters, because this is the heart of French rugby here. We're sitting just around the corner from the rugby stadium of Montpellier, and there's a lot of visiting rugby fans come from England to watch the race, the events down here, from Perpignan to Béziers to Montpellier to Nîmes, all the way across the southern part. It's a real tough sport in this part of the world.
Yeah, it is. And the rugby mad here in Montpellier, they'll probably see a visit from the Saracens or something like that from Great Britain during the next season. Saracens winning the rugby league this year, so last year rather, so they'll be up for the season. So that lovely little bit of artistry in the field there, with the wine falling off the handlebars of the black-bereted man from France. Now Gilbert brings the Belgian flag back up to the rear of the peloton as TJ Van Garderen has dropped back here just to change his bottles by the look of it. This is all allowed and quite above board and legal. You take on the bottles, he'll probably take on a few for his mates as well.
The rules actually state that you can go and get drinks at any time in the race after 50 kilometres have been covered, up until 20 kilometres to go. However, you have to drop back to your team car's position in the convoy. You can't call the team car forward to take on board food and drinks.
I think that's a matter of safety these days. If the cars, as they used to, get mixed up with the riders, then serious accidents can ensue, especially at the speeds they ride the Tour de France these days. Well, the gap is now 1:11 and just on 42 kilometres to go.
Oh, just creeping inside of the top 15 there, George Hincapie. Just looking behind Ventoso, it was Renshaw 10th, Eisel 11th, Martin, Team High Road 12th, Matty Goss 13th. So obviously a lot of Team High Road riders at the front end of the pack this afternoon. The long lines of the vines are not yet carrying the grapes that will produce some of the Languedoc wine from this region, but that will happen in a couple of months' time. The harvest here, the vendange, doesn't happen till around about the month of September. So as we look now at 42 kilometres to go, 1 minute and 10 seconds to go, Philippe Gilbert just having a very brief bike change at the back end of the pack, but he's back in the field. Well, as we look now at the peloton, a little bit of calm starting to return to the bunch after they went through the sprint point there at Montagnac a few moments ago. Philippe Gilbert changing his tyre after a rear wheel flat tyre, but getting himself very smartly back into the peloton. Nothing to worry about for him. Finishing in 3rd place, though, in that sprint to Mark Cavendish. Cavendish getting himself the maximum points available from the main field, ahead of his closest rival, Jose Joaquim Rojas, and in 3rd place at Philippe Gilbert. And those are the top 3 men in the green jersey standings, and that's a competition that will go right the way down to Paris. Currently, the advantage hanging quite possibly on the side of Philippe Gilbert, because he's got a chance to get himself some points in the big mountain stages, unless, of course, he's used up too much energy so far. Cavendish will have to nurse himself through the mountains over the next week of racing, because after today's finish, there are no more sprint stages left in this Tour de France until the hallowed cobblestones of the Champs-Élysées in Paris. Starting to build up on that advantage once again. It was as low as 1 minute and 4 seconds, but I think because the main field have closed down now the chase, I think we'll see that stretch back up to 1.5 or 2 minutes before they start chasing again, with about 20 kilometers to go. Delage 133. Mikel Delage. FDJ are an extremely good team. They've been on the attack, and now they're getting down into the final. These guys now know, they work everything out in their minds, the professional bike riders. They will now know they've gone through the sprint point. The main fielder didn't catch them before the sprint point. They've got an hour of racing or a little bit less to go, so now let's give it everything, guys, and work together.
And they're covering now about 45 kilometers an hour. Nice little drink for Samuel Dumoulin. You can see he's a nice sprinter's build, isn't he? He should have won more stages, I feel, of the Tour de France.
Well, he crashed out of the Tour a couple of years ago and broke his elbow, and he carried on very courageously to try and get himself to the finish, but once he'd been to hospital, they noticed the crack in his elbow and he had to pull out. He has won a number of races throughout his career, 26 in total, but this year rather well, because he won 2 stages of the Tour of Catalonia.
Yeah, he's had a good year, and he's got himself another ride in the Tour de France. Now, Team HTC have resumed the control of the front. They delivered their sprinter to the line, Mark Cavendish, albeit it did look a little bit of a struggle. It looked as though that finishing line was coming just a bit late, but it didn't matter. The photo gave it to Cavendish, and now it's all eyes down for the finish. Mark Cavendish looking for his 4th win of the year. And the field are holding this breakaway. They've never lost sight of this breakaway. It's only got just over 3 minutes. Now it's down to 1:25. We are about 50 minutes from the finishing line, Paul. And look at this. The peloton wants some help now.
Well, Phil, this is the truce moment, I think, before we really start to chase in earnest to try and win the stage. And this is the moment when I can imagine the breakaway's advantage will go up to 1.5 or 2 minutes. I don't think they'll let it go more than 2 minutes now, because having done all that work at the front, HTC High Road will be having a bit of respite before they once again get the old recipe. Danny Pate on the front with Lars back. They'll start to set the tempo up and bring that gap down again before they relinquish it to the men who are going to close it down and try and set up the win for Mark Cavendish today.
Yeah.
But you can see now this is Just Postuma on the front in the black and blue jersey. Stuart O'Grady, the next rider to come up along there. Jens Voigt bandaged up after his 2 very dramatic crashes of yesterday. And while Europcar are always very happy to be in the wings in case they need to do something to look after Thomas Voeckler, who's looking more and more comfortable in the yellow jersey. And I tell you what, it's not only the fact that he actually accompanied the riders in the Tour de France yesterday. I have to say, Thomas Voeckler had the audacity, Phil, to go out and actually attack them on the final kilometres there.
Well, yes, absolutely, and that's the way the racing should be. This Tour de France in the last week of the Tour is going to be incredibly exciting. But for the moment, we're looking at a sprint finish. The last day for Mark Cavendish for a week of racing, I think, unless things go incredibly well in the mountains. He will be chasing those intermediate sprint points along the way. Looking now at the Abbé Saint-Amal de Valmagne.
Yeah. By the Count of Béziers, which is not too far away from here, but the abbey was actually founded in Valmagne in 1144, and it's a Benedictine abbey. It was requested from the monastery as a detachment from the monastery of Adorel.
Well, for a couple of 100 years during the 12th to 14th century, it's one of the richest abbeys in the south of France. It was damaged by the world wars as well, but it looks pretty good now as our helicopter does the usual pirouette around yet another beautiful building here in France.
Yeah, as you can see, Phil, there the cloister is made up of an extremely large courtyard closed on in each side by 5 incredibly large arches. It's an octagonal structure, and the arches are closed in, have griffin heads as their decor.
HTC, we're always looking to you for inspiration. That's why we created the HTC Desire S, so you can glide effortlessly through life. The HTC Desire S with HTC Sense is available exclusively from Telstra. Glide into a Telstra store to see the HTC Desire S in action.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Morning.
That time of year again. Oh, it's going to be all right.
When South Australia hosts the Santos Tour Down Under, it's more than just a leg on the UCI World Tour. It's a festival of cycling that comes to life right across the state. Over one massive week of celebrations. The Santos Tour Down Under. Take the ride of your life.
So many tears I've cried, so much pain inside. But baby, it ain't over till it's over. So many years we tried to keep our love alive. 'Cause baby, it ain't over till it's over. So many tears we cried, so much pain inside.
That is something we have difficulty in explaining, because the cameras don't go to the back of the race, but the sprinters like Mark have a real hard time, don't they, of getting through those hilly stages. It's not routine for them to survive to Paris.
Not at all. In fact, yesterday had a very tight time cut. They base it on the average speed of the stage, and that was very difficult yesterday. Mark, with full effort of himself and three teammates, finished a minute ahead of the time cut and was in real jeopardy.
Yeah, the big question is you've built up an incredible team over these years. You've been around, you've had different sponsors, you've had Columbia, HTC. The question now is, you know, the team is looking to try and find a big sponsor for next year to keep together what I regard as probably the best team on the circuit. Is there anything in the wire to come along?
Well, we're busy on it. We're trying. Our real focus is to try and continue our relationship with HTC. It's probably been the best sports sponsorship on the planet in the last few years, and we hope we can translate that into a longer-term relationship. But there have been some very interesting conversations that have started since the tour, and maybe something there will pan out.
Well, I really hope so, Bob, simply because what you have done with this group of riders, because you've chosen riders from anywhere in the world that fitted in with the team, and you have more nationalities on your team than anywhere else.
Yeah, we've got 20 countries represented in the team, and they, as you see, they're really a showcase for teamwork. We back them with all the tools and technology we can find in cycling and other sports to help them be as strong as they can be as athletes.
The difficult thing is when you develop a team like this, I mean, we've just been through the Pyrenees. Phil and I like bird watching. We saw a lot of vultures, and there's always a lot of vultures around your team. You're developing these guys, and every year somebody comes along and thinks, well, we'll take away all the best guys from HTC, yet you come back and you produce more riders like TJ Van Garderen, this new American kid who discovering the Tour de France for the first time.
He's doing a brilliant job. Really the only second American to wear the polka dot jersey. Even if it was just for a day, that's a real indicator.
He's the first to wear it. Greg LeMond won it, but never got to wear it, of course, because he had yellow.
You know, it's really our strength, though, is finding and developing young talent wherever they come from. We're lucky with TJ being American, but we've got great athletes from around the planet, and that's our formula for success. That's what we think we can do consistently year in and year out.
Who creates that mentality in the team? Because sometimes if Mark Cavendish can, and we've seen him in the past, to try to get a teammate to win the race, it really is, it's quite like Musketeers. It's all for one and one for all, and it doesn't matter sometimes who wins from the team as long as it's the team that wins.
Well, you know, it's really part of the selection process. We're looking for guys that are team-oriented, that will commit to the team, and when they have their chances for success, they're ready to take advantage of it. It comes a lot from the management team and the guys in the car, Aldog Holm. They're really quite exceptional, and they really are the guys who find the talent and turn them into winners.
Well, it's not just the riders, is it? You've got Brian Holm, team director of Denmark, Alan Piper of Australia, you've got Ralph Aldog of Germany, yet they seem to gel together.
No, they really do. We've been together now for 5 years. It's one of the more stable management teams, and we back that group of leadership with independent experts from all kinds of sports science and other disciplines, and that's a key advantage for us.
Bob, there's only one final question before we let you go, Bob, because I know you mentioned about all the guys being very nervous. This is a nervous stage because of the wind. Are your guys prepared for that? And have you come in from the field, and what does the wind look like on the last 20, 30 kilometres?
I think the last 20 kilometers, there's clear sections of crosswind and the roads are narrow, so I think that's the most dangerous area. The finale is very complicated. From about kilometer 8 to kilometer 3, there's a lot of turns, some narrow roads, some roundabouts. I'm personally nervous about that. And the sprint finish is not easy. A good part of it is uphill. So I think this thing is wide open. Almost anything can happen here.
So it's not automatically for Cavendish. Of course it is, Bob. Come on, you're the owner of the team. The best of luck, Bob, and thanks so much for coming into the commentary box.
Well, that was great there, just getting a little bit of insight into HTC High Road. That was Bob Stapleton, the man who took over the management of the team way back in the days when it was T-Mobile, and then brought it into the High Road formation, brought in sponsors like Columbia and brought in sponsors like HTC, and we wish him a lot of luck. This is Laurens ten Dam, the guy who had that very dramatic crash yesterday because he crashed on one of the descents onto his face, but being in the Tour de France, he wants to continue.
So we're looking at 1:25, I think it is 1:25 at the moment, and about 31 kilometres to go. Now, we've heard Bob Stapleton describe those last kilometres, so we should see a change of interest, but what it's certainly done for us is explain completely why some of the big teams have got themselves their leaders to the front here. Andy and Frank Schlecker up here, so too is the yellow jersey of Vauclair, and so too is Cadel Evans. And that is why they're coming up, because of the crosswinds, the narrow roads, the hazardous roundabouts, etc. on that final run-in. It may be a day for the sprinters, but it can be a highly nervous day for the overall leaders.
Well, yes, this part of the world, Phil, I know this part of the world. I've raced down here. You mentioned a couple of days. Oh, little problem at the back. And you see, this is why you have to be attentive. Yeah, he's in the wars yesterday with that nasty crash, and also in the wars today. But you know, when you have an accident like that, you've got to try and get yourself through the next day. He's got the rest day tomorrow to hopefully get himself just a little bit better. But in no other race in the world would a rider like Laurens ten Dam continue with that injury and that crash from yesterday. He would have called it a day and gone for an early bath, as they say in the sport of rugby. Yeah. But it's the Tour de France. You want to get through and you want to get to the finish because of the joy of getting your bike onto the cobblestones on the Champs-Élysées after this 3-week race.
Well, déjà vu for Samuel Dumoulin at the front here. He's been in this situation before. And on one occasion he won into Nantes, on another occasion he lost into La Grande Motte when he finished fourth. But he knows that these breakaways can succeed. As you see now, we've got away from sea level. We're going over these little ripples here before we finally run down to the finish. So the racing terrain has changed slightly. And when you're racing at these sort of speeds, these little hills can really dig into those muscles, especially after 3 days in the Pyrenees. The flying legs of HTC Columbia. Danny Pate is the man driving at the moment from the USA. I can't see behind. It's not Lars Bak. Yes, it is Lars Bak of Denmark on the left. Behind him is Tony Martin of Germany. You heard Bob Stapleton say that they've got 20 nations represented on this full stable of riders, and that they all gel so well together because we've spent a lot of time with this team.
We have, but now they're really starting to give it some stick. Right, we're heading down now to the finish line in Montpellier, and last time the Tour de France finished in Montpellier, it was actually with a team time trial. On that occasion, the winners were Team Astana. But turning the clock back a little bit further back to 2007, we're going to talk about an African winner, because on that occasion, charging into the finish line was a rider from South Africa by the name of Robbie Hunter. Robbie didn't get himself a selection for the Tour de France this year. He's a member of Team Radio Shack, and it was obviously one of the top teams in the world, and it was very difficult coming down to the final selection of 9 riders. But I'm sure Robbie is watching this every day and enjoying it as well, and hoping that the rest of his teammates get through the Tour de France without too many injuries. Also a member of Radio Shack, Robbie McEwen, a prolific winner of stage at the Tour de France. He also didn't make the split this year. I think he's enjoying some Aussie rules.
This is where it's getting exciting now, Paul, because they're changing direction, and the wind obviously is hitting them across and from the back at the moment. It's gone to a fairly good tail to cross at the finishing line. These are the leaders now. They're looking a little bit ragged. The clock is showing us that at a minute 16 they did build back up. They have been away now since the second kilometre, 163 kilometres they have now led for today. Dara Place on the front.
Well, just a quick look, and you know, once if the riders can get Phil safely through until 4 kilometres to go, then I think we'll have a very good sprint to the line. But it's as Bob Stapleton said, from kilometre 10 to go to 4 to go, there is nothing but a repetition of these traffic circles that France has managed to put almost at every junction that they can find in the southern part of France at the moment.
Well, Montpellier seems to be being rebuilt with the tramways that they're building there, as well as buildings. It's becoming a very modern centre. It's also one of the commercial capitals of Europe, not just of France. 27 kilometres to go now, and they're coming down so quickly here because the pressure is staying on. Another difficult bend to negotiate. You see the yellow jersey at the bottom lost a lot of places there by going round on the outside. He went from the head of the peloton to midway, Thomas Voigtlepp, and we'll probably see when we get another shot of it.
Yep, this is life at the back of the peloton. Well, 188, the man who was in the breakaway or on the cameras yesterday, Igor Silin, a very aggressive rider of Team Katusha, as well as Anthony Charteau, 182, and difficulty at the back.
27 kilometres to go. The crosswinds are now going to have their say in the Tour de France. Look at that Union flag down there as it rips across the roads of the area of Hérault. We're outside of Montpellier, and this is where the field can be torn to shreds by these crosswinds, especially if the sprinters teams and the leaders teams start riding hard on the front.
Well, this is why everyone was nervous this afternoon. You may just notice the man who did a lot of work in the mountains, 182, last year's winner of the King of the Mountains, Anthony Charteau. He's grovelling, and I mean that in the best possible way, to stay in contact with the main field, which is a very difficult thing to do. There could be a little bit of respite as they come through this small little village, the small village of Montbazin, but then once they go through the village and out into the open plains again, Phil, there'll be a lot of pressure on this main field.
Well, the leaders are also going to be under pressure. Here comes HTC High Road again, trying to keep control of that peloton and trying to keep Mark Cavendish out of the wind as best they can and in the position to win the sprint. Paul Sherwins has figured out that the last 4 kilometres might return to somewhat of normality, but they could split before that last 4 kilometres here, as Charteau goes round, last man in the long, long line of riders now.
Yeah, there's no consistency at all, Phil, between kilometre 8 to go and 4 to go. There's left hand, right hand, roundabouts, up and down and round the corners. It really will be a dogfight out there. But now it's a little bit calmer. Danny Pate riding on the front, lining up all of the riders from HTC, but you can see the other teams have got that organisation going. The red and black jerseys on the left-hand side, they're looking after Cadel Evans. A little bit further up, you've got the black and white jerseys with Leopard Trek written on them. They're looking after Andy Schleck and Frank Schleck. They're good riders at riding in the main field close to the front like this. And also, you notice the pale blue jerseys with the black in the middle, Saxo Bank. They're the riders who are looking after Alberto Contador. But these are nervous times for riders. You might not think, oh, it's pretty easy on the flat, but look how hard it is to stay in contact at the back. And this is quite an interesting rider. First time we've had a chance to actually identify him. This is Andre Amador, and he's the only rider in the Tour de France from Costa Rica. And he's just almost got popped off because of that acceleration. It is so difficult. It looks easy here, doesn't it, when these guys are spread across the road, but they're from the right-hand side to the left-hand side. Most of those riders are sheltered from the wind, but when you get out into the long tail of the snake right at the back of the peloton, you're getting the wind at 45 degrees, and it's so difficult to stay on the wheel of the rider in front of you unless you can get inside him and sit in that position at 45 degrees to his body. That was 25 kilometers to go, quite briefly, but you can see because of the line of these riders, the riders are taking the wind on their left-hand shoulders. They make that organisation. Samy Dumoulin has done his turn. He's swinging across now, having come down that line, back into the shelter from the wind. They're keeping it tight now because the wind is so strong. They're doing extremely short turns. They may well only be doing like a 50-meter turn each here before they come to the back and drift back up through that line again. All of this to try and protect them from the buffeting of that wind, which is coming right across from the left.
Well, unlike when we raced to La Grande Motte, which is not far away from here 2 years ago when the crosswind split the field, at the moment they're looking as though they may hold that wind, and there is a change of direction before the finish. So the wind is not always across. It's a minute 04. It's really tough now for those 5 riders to survive. They've been in the lead for 166 kilometers just now, and they've got 24 more to survive. The peloton passing under 25 to go.
These are the dangerous parts now with this wind, Phil. Once you go through the small towns, these little villages around the region that we're in, of the Hérault this afternoon, you're protected. When you go out into the area where the cornfields and where the wheat fields have been harvested, and you go into the vineyards, that's when it becomes very difficult.
Oh, Samy Dumoulin here just putting his head down and burying himself. He's so small, there's no protection. I think he's the smallest rider in the race, actually. There's no protection for the other riders behind him. But nonetheless, they are just not talking to each other, getting on with the job of holding the pace. They're looking at half an hour to survive to the finish at these sort of speeds.
Well, they're well organised. Nobody's shirking any of their pace-making. This is looking a bit dangerous. When you see Leopard Trek come to the front like this, this is a team who in the past, Phil, have been very good at ripping to pieces a field in the crosswinds. Originally, these guys were the guys that formed the backbone of CSC. Then they went across to Team Saxo Bank. The majority of Team Saxo Bank left during the winter transfer season to form that team there in the second row. But I wouldn't say they were a second row at all. This is a first stream section of riders.
But it just shows you the speed of Team HTC High Road. They were favourites to win the team time trial. That's exactly what they're doing now. They've got the whole squad on the front. They lost by tenths of a second. As they go down the right side, there are 2 different pelotons there. Riders are scurrying to go left and right, grabbing the train, their things going places. While at the back, it's rather like a kite now, isn't it? That's the tail of the kite. That won't be easy to get up into the peloton.
Well, the tail of the kite is wagging around in the wind and stringing from left to right, and riders looking for the easiest place to position themselves. Not the place to be in the running towards the finish, especially inside of the last 25 kilometres, but it is very difficult to stay in contact with the peloton. Last man in the line there was Thomas de Gent of Team Vacances Soleil. As we rejoin the leaders, look at the wind there. You can see the flags are rippling. That's the indication of where the wind is coming from. It's coming right the way down the valley here. This is the Mistral which is blowing this afternoon. Samy Dumoulin, we've got we've got the youngest rider in the race, number 213 there, and the smallest rider in the race. So there's a move at Ignatiev. Ignatiev, the rider from Russia and from Team Katusha, has seen this as a possibility from him to steal a margin in front of the rest of the riders. He's the national time trial champion of Russia, and if they give him 10 or 15 meters advantage, they'll never see his back wheel again. He's been an incredibly titled rider. He was the world junior time trial champion on 2 occasions. Give him 10 meters and you won't see his back wheel again. Nicky Terpstra, he realises that. He's a time trial champion himself. He's also an individual pursuiter off the track, and of course the former Dutch national time trial champion. He is very used to racing in windy conditions like these. big move. The man in the blue shorts tries to almost get across the gap, and in fact, going back to Ignatiev in first position there, he was the Olympic Games points champion from Athens in 2004.
Well, a quick reaction from Terpstra has brought him right up here to Mikhail Ignatiev. I think they had to do this.
A funny old game this, Phil, because we're actually talking about two former track champions. Niki Terpstra, former pursuit champion of Holland in the on the track, and also Ignatiev, a former Olympic gold medalist in the points race, but also world junior time trial champion.
Yes, I actually commentated on him when he won that Olympic gold medal, and he's got pure speed in those legs, but there's more money in road racing. That's probably why he came off the track. These are the three riders. It's being left here now to Anthony Delaplace, the first timer in the Tour de France, to try and get the other two Frenchmen across the gap. But they've been outwitted here by Terpstra, who's from Holland, and Ignatiev from the Russian Katusha team. 50 seconds, it's coming down quickly. These two riders dodging the crowd line, trying to quickly get out of sight and edge away now. They've got 8 seconds over Delage, Dumoulin and Delaplace, Niki Terpstra and Mikhail Ignatiev of Russia.
Well, these two riders have got firepower. They've got the ability and the speed to stay off the front end of the three riders who were with them, but they may well cause a little bit of consternation in the main field, because they are the kind of riders who could survive over these last 20 kilometres.
Well, they've settled back into the rhythm here, these three. The gap is 51 seconds across the peloton now to the two front runners. These boys are now dropping back to 11 seconds, so I think they've probably lost their chance here. They didn't react quick enough. Our escorts of the gendarmerie are moving forward. Well, there it is, 20 kilometres to go. Two riders only just ahead of the other three in the breakaway. The gap is 13 seconds lead now for Niki Terpstra of Holland, Mikhail Delage of the Russian Katusha team. They've had to make a move. They sense that the race is coming to a complete regrouping, and they've gone. And I think these other three have just gone under at 13 seconds. Well, 14 seconds. They may not be able to close that gap.
The thing about guys like Mikhail Ignatiev and Niki Terpstra, Phil, those guys have got so much speed in their legs coming from their track background. If you're not on their wheel, not in their slipstream when they attack, it's very difficult to nail back the gap once they've opened it.
Concentration now, a new man at the front here for HTC. That's TJ Van Garderen, the rider who is looking long-term. This is his first Tour de France for the youngster, 23 years of age. 22, sorry.
So the gap is 52 seconds at 10 kilometres to go, or 20 kilometres to go for the main field at HTC High Road. Once again, not got any friends in this peloton as they start to get themselves organised and think about trying to set this race up for Mark Cavendish. But to do so, they're going to have to catch 129 in the blue shorts there with Quick Step written across it. Niki Terpstra in front of him, Mikhail Ignatiev, the Russian rider, just 26 years of age. The wind is battering these riders from the left-hand side, while these three Frenchmen have been caught in the crossfire of the Dutch-Russian attack. Youngest rider going through there, Delaplace. If this is urgent, they're trying to get across, but once they start to look up the road, they can see the gap is opening quite dramatically, because the yellow car that they were looking at, the neutral service vehicle, is behind the two leaders, and it's actually starting to move away from them. Well, now it's a question of will there be any assistance coming to the front for HTC High Road. But they may well get some assistance from Leopard Trek.
24 seconds, so the three, Delage, Dumoulin, Delaplace, the three Ds we'll call them, they should drop back really and forget it for today. It's two against the peloton now. The face of Fabien Cancellara off to the left of our picture with that white cross as champion of Switzerland. All of the member contenders, Alberto Contador peeping in with those yellow glasses to our left, the owner of the Maillot Jaune, Voigtler, all keeping out of trouble by riding at the front of the Tour de France.
No, but you can see there's a lot of lines forming here, and these are not necessarily lines of the sprinters' teams. These are guys looking after their leaders in the overall standings. You've got Saxo Bank looking after Alberto Contador, Leopard Trek looking after the Schleck brothers, and always in the wings, never very far away, you've always got Cadel Evans with his men from BMC Racing around him too.
just behind the man in the centre there, lazily hanging onto those handlebars was Stuart O'Grady, and then on his right was Linus Gerdeman.
But still, it's the big control, HTC High Road. It's locked in at 50 seconds. These two riders now could create a big surprise. They've got firepower, and they will, as long as they continue to work together, maybe we'll just prize open their advantage. But the skies are looking a little bit dark there over towards the right-hand side. They had threatened rain in this part of France this afternoon. Fortunately, for the moment, it has kept away from the riders after a stunning day in the Pyrenees tomorrow. It would be a little bit of bad luck for these riders if the rain came down on the rest day tomorrow. They'll move into the Département of the Drôme, where they'll be scattered up and down the valley and try to enjoy their rest day, although many of them will probably have to go for a 1.5 to 2.5 hour bike ride just to keep the legs going before they make the next incursion, and that of course is into the Alps.
They'll want to come out fighting on Tuesday because that is showdown week in the Tour de France. It leads to Paris, all roads will, and the cobblestones of the Champs-Élysées next Sunday. The peloton are preoccupied at the moment, and Team HTC High Road need to get this shut down now. They're all starting to talk to each other, and they're all looking a little bit tired. That's because of the wind, which is making them ride very quickly. Keep your eye on the green jersey when you spot him there, because take a look at his face. He is really under pressure, Mark Cavendish, to keep control of his team at this point of the race.
Well, it's been a tough day for everybody. You look at the race profile and you say, wow, it's an easy day today. We go about 60 metres above sea level. That's not very much at all. But today, the thing that's really damaged the riders is the wind. It's been buffeting the riders. And those three riders who were left behind from that leading group, Phil, they're pretty much about to get caught there. You can see them not more than 50 metres in front of the peloton.
That's the three. The three Ds are back in the pack any minute now, but they are still 36 seconds behind the leaders who broke clear, so there's still a chance. Slim one at that, I know, as they're looking for the 15 kilometre to go, Bannon out. The peloton just makes its lovely shape on the road and comes back together again, and the three riders up front are virtually caught now, so this is the end of the day for Dumoulin, Delage and Delaplace.
Yes, but there are still a lot more sprinters in this race than just Mark Cavendish, and riders who would dearly like to get their wheel across the line in front of him. I have to say, Philippe Gilbert on this occasion will have to hand over responsibility to Andre Greipel. He weighs number 33 and he's already beaten Mark Cavendish in a sprint to the line. Difficult to see what the tactics will be on Team Garmin-Cervelo, because they've got Thor Hushovd and Tyler Farah. Farah, I think, a much faster sprinter, a younger sprinter than Thor Hushovd, and we've seen Thor Hushovd is quite prepared to lead out his American teammate.
Well, another 174 kilometres out front today for Michael Delage, so he's gone through 780 kilometres in the breakaways since the Tour started. That's a massive distance. Wouldn't surprise me if the referees don't give him the most aggressive rider prize of the day again. But there's still two out there, and here they are now, just relaying each other as fast as they can. The gap is still, at this stage, a respectable 41 seconds. Dumoulin is straight out the back.
Well, he was pushed to the limit there. They were hoping to survive, using all of the last energy they had available to try and stay clear of the peloton. But when you get caught like that at speeds like this, it's very easy just to get popped. 15 kilometres to go now for the main field, and still HTC High Road, the other teams of the sprinters waiting to take over, making sure that they've got an eye on this two-man leading group. This is the 5th Tour de France for Maxime Iglinski, who's just gone backwards there, and now it's also the 4th Tour de France for Niki Terpstra. Having a quick glance there at the Focus bike that he's riding, a bike that's been provided to Team Katusha. And if you don't know what Katusha means, Katusha was brought into the sport with a number of different varying sponsors for the Russian squad. And in fact, Katusha is the powerful missile launching rocket machine that was introduced into the Second World War. Still exists in this day and age, although under a slightly more modernized form, and it was supposed to strike fear. They'll get over to, they're looking to get half a road here because of the crosswinds. They want to sprint the field.
13.5 kilometres, 37 seconds the gap. Danny Pate is driving the train now.
I don't know if you noticed that little bit of urgency there, Phil. Because the wind is coming from the left-hand side, they would do what the Dutch in the old days used to call halve weg, which means half of the road, meaning don't let anybody else get into our slipstream. We'll shelter ourselves from the wind and let everybody else scramble in the other part of the course.
Well, the Dutch were perfectionists at racing in the crosswind, especially with all the dikes in Holland, and it makes for very, very tough racing. It's not just the hills that will split up the Tour de France. If the wind is strong enough and the riders are strong enough at the front, they can break this race just as much as climbing a Pyrenean mountain.
Well, that was one of the first Dutch phrases I actually learned, and I learned it from the old TI Rally squad because they were masters at this, and that's why I would expect to see maybe something happening from Team Leopard Trek. A la Fouet was a tactic that they adopted to try and split the race up on the run in towards the finish.
Well, you can see the angle that indicates the pressure from the wind. HTC High Road have the advantage by holding the right of the road, and everybody else trying to break in. That looks like a Movistar teammate. That's Ventoso, who's moved up in the blackish colours, because he's looking to help Rojas today in the sprint finish.
Yeah, but the other guys who are moving up on the left-hand side, well, that is a scramble. They're in the wind moving up towards the front-hand side, and you're using a lot of energy, while the riders from HTC High Road, using half of the road, are only sheltering and protecting their own 9 men.
Well, we're getting into the danger zone of the course from kilometre 8 to 4. We're at kilometre 12 to go from the finish. 32 seconds. They've lost a little bit more, but there's still plenty of fight in these boys, who broke away after 2 kilometres today, so they've been out front for more than 170 kilometres. That is a long way to hold off the Tour de France and still expect to win the stage. But I think the way this is looking, the team HTC High Road is having to work extremely hard. It's probably as well that they are racing to a rest day tomorrow.
Almost certainly, and that's what they'll be thinking about. This is the last final effort for the next 48 hours. Still the youngster there, 22 years of age, TJ Van Garderen, battering it away on the front. Looks like Marcus Burkhardt at the back for BMC Racing. He's done a lot of work this afternoon for Cadel Evans. Now all he has to do is sit up and cruise to the finish line.
Well, there's no danger of elimination if you get left now. There's only 11 kilometres left to ride. They're clocking a kilometre a minute towards the finish, so they're looking at 11 minutes to the finish, which says a lot for the power of the white jerseys, because look at them all stretching out the front of the peloton like a flag in the dark, and they continue to race on with their man, Mark Cavendish, hiding as best he can, trying to stay out of the wind. But looking behind him, I think, in fact, he's being marked, in fact, by Rojas at the moment, who's come through with his team as well.
And it looked very much as if Ben Swift was going to get himself in on the action this afternoon. The Sky Rider, who's an extremely good sprinter in his own right, was also starting to line up onto the back wheel. But then when you notice the sprinters looking for Mark Cavendish's wheel, you can also see in the same gaggle of riders, you can see Cadel Evans, Andy Schleck, Alberto Contador. They're not there for the sprint. They're there to make sure they don't get involved in any accident or split in the main field as we run down to the final 10 kilometres.
TJ Van Garderen has now made a left turn right into the headwind here, so it makes it that little bit more difficult. There's Mark Renshaw, the best lead-out man in the business. He's got his position right in front of Cavendish in green. So they're the last 2 to go. It's up to Mark to lead Cavendish to the line.
Well, Geraint Thomas has also come up for Sky. Now, he will probably be the lead-out man for Ben Swift. The funny thing about Geraint Thomas is he doesn't know whether he wants to sprint for himself or sprint for somebody else. So I think in this occasion he will either look after Swift or Edvald Bosenhagen.
Well, take your hat off to these two. We're commentating like it is a group sprint already, but at the moment they are racing for third place. We look at the arch ahead now. This is 10 kilometres to go for the finish. 2 lone leaders, they're still there. They still have a chance. At 28 seconds is the gap. But once they get through these narrower roads in the finish, we actually come into nice wide roads into the city of Montpellier. The peloton has turned into a headwind, so that concertina has taken effect again. The clock is counting to 10 kilometres here for the peloton.
Well, it was about 30 seconds as they go under that banner. It's going to be about 25 seconds the advantage. Even Juan Antonio Fletcher coming forward there, completely bandaged on every extremity of his body, but still battling for the front.
You think he was auditioning for the Invisible Man with all those bandages on him, but in fact, poor old Juan Antonio Fletcher was the second rider involved in that accident with the media car a few days ago now on the road to Saint-Fleur. But at the minute, it looks as though they're trying to get their man, Geraint Thomas and Boysenhagen, up to the front as well.
Well, it's not supposed to get tricky until 8 kilometres to go, but here they're filtering off the big highway now, and they're going to circumnavigate the city of Montpellier and start to get a repetitive number of these very difficult roundabouts in France.
And the wind change again now. It's come across from the shoulder, so the line will form once more at the front. Montpellier Centre That's where we're headed now at a very high speed of knots. At 9 kilometres to go, 22 seconds the gap. These boys are resisting the catch.
Well, now you can see everyone's moving forward, everyone's looking for their teammates. It looks as if all of a sudden HTC are starting to lose one or two of their riders. Danny Pate has disappeared to the back. Not surprising after all of the work that he's done. They're now asking Tony Martin in those yellow glasses on the front to try and do a massive long turn. He can do that, but I think 8 kilometres to go is a long way out from the finish. As we go around, basically we come off this freeway and back into the outskirts of town.
Well, thank heavens for helicopters as we see the leaders have gone through now, as the peloton are led now at the back. Danny Pate is last man in the race, having done so much work for HTC, and now it is up to the others to try and continue. When you see all these riders going through our camera lens with bandages all over them, it really does make it look as though we've been to war rather than a bike race. But right now, these are the two, and a little rise here, and at this stage of the race, little rises feel like mountains.
They hurt a lot when you've been stomping a big gear in the wind, but these two men are experienced professional bike riders. Both of them have been champions of their country. One of them has been an Olympic champion back in 2004. They've got 15, 16 seconds advantage. That is only 250 metres at speeds like this.
Well, thank heavens they barriered the road there, because had they split there like they often do, the left-hand split would have gone sailing off into some other parts of Montpellier. So they've made sure the peloton keeps right. That was one thing I was worried about out there, but they've done it well. As the peloton, though, has to squeeze into that narrower road, and it's gone a lot longer all of a sudden.
We'll talk about a distillery. A lot of riders getting decanted to the back end of the main field on that occasion, and they will never see the front end of the peloton again this afternoon. Still, this 22-year-old from the United States with the Dutch name, TJ van Garderen. I don't know where he's getting this strength from, Phil, but he's battled himself back up to the front because he knows the guys need the extra firepower over the last 2 kilometres. Otherwise, they'll find themselves getting swamped.
13 seconds to go to the catch, and then all of the teams will want to try and break up that train of HTC High Road. Nicky Terpstra here, last year's champion of Holland, pushes on, and he's going to find plenty of help still to come from Ignatieff. Tony Martin is now the pace worker here, followed by Peter Velits.
Just spotted a new train coming up to the front, just over to the right-hand side, Garmin Cervelo, and it was their man Navadauskas who was trying to get their man Tor Hushovd, Julian Dean, and of course Tyler Farah into their own little line on the left-hand side. Farah may well also be thinking of a crack to get his second stage victory in the Tour this afternoon, and he could very well easily get set up by Tor Hushovd.
Well, the Garmin Cervelo, they're the boys in the blue crash helmets, have certainly come forward in force there now. As we go down to just 12 seconds, we're going to see these boys make that turn very, very quickly here. But they're still resisting. We're looking for 5 kilometres. We've got 2 kilometres to go to that.
Watch these corners. These are very precarious corners. Lots of riders will be taking risks to make sure they don't lose their position in that line of riders. It's still under the control of HTC High Road, but all the other teams now are getting themselves organised. There are also, you can start to see the purple and blue jerseys of Team Lampre. A good opportunity for a man like Alessandro Patacchi here this afternoon.
Well, they're going to get caught just around 5 kilometres to go. These two riders will have survived in the lead for 187 kilometres today, and they're going to fall short by just 5. It's uncanny how these professional cyclists time this catch and at the same time plan the downfall of the other teams.
It's tough for HTC High Road and Mark Cavendish. He's still got 6 riders left, but how tired are they after doing all of the pacemaking? Terpstra has gone. All of a sudden, Ignatieff says, no, the legs are just a little bit too sore this afternoon. This is a last-minute burst. This is not a time trial. This is going to be an individual pursuit for Nicky Terpstra.
Well, he can do it. He's a very good time trialist as he now decides to give it one last shot here. The last survivor of the 5 men. The last show defiance by a rider on Quick-Step who haven't won a stage of this race yet. As they continue now, this Belgian team using a Dutch cyclist to try and get the win. Remember, we've never had a French stage win either. And having lost their sprinter William Bonner yesterday, he was eliminated outside the time limit. So I don't think they have got a sprinter left now. Maybe just Sebastian Eno or Tergo, but they've got to work pretty hard to get up here now. Yeah, they're mixing with the best sprinters in the world, and the fastest teams have got control.
Yes, they lost their big sprinter of the first week, Romain Feliu, before we went into the Pyrenees, suffering from a very nasty case of tendonitis to his knee. Once he saw the mountains loom, he said, right, I think I better get this treated before I line myself up for the last part of the season. Now it's down to Bernie Eisel, Tony Martin behind him, Peter Velits is a man riding high in the overall standings, and here he sacrifices himself for Cavendish.
Oh, a kind of reverse loop here as the riders go part way the wrong way round the roundabout here in France, and then they go back the right way. They'll be getting dizzy as they finally run in now towards the end. We're looking for 5 kilometres to go, and he must have just gone under it. There he is, 5 kilometres to go. That is for Nicky Terpstra, and they didn't catch him at 5. Computer was wrong as they now continue to race towards the line.
He's hanging on to a 12-second advantage. He's got one very nasty right-hand bend left to go, and that's at 4 kilometres left. Then after that, it's a big sweep where we start to get into a big boulevard and circumnavigate before lining up finally for the finishing line.
Well, the way this is going, if they catch Nicky, they could be in the last 500 metres of the day, and they'll just have to make the sprint take him over because he is showing a terrific turn of speed there. Bernie Eisel is just racing, but remember, this team has been on the front for hours now, and this is now, we're losing here Ignatia, but this is they've got to judge that they leave Mark Renshaw in front of Cavendish with 300 metres to go, and they're starting to lose their riders.
Well, this is the final difficult corner of the race now. The right-hander at 4,000 metres to go. Terpstra around it safely, but there'll be a big battle now. The road widens up, and that will, I think, be very difficult for this.
We've got Christian van der Velde's hit the front. There's a change of leadership here now. This is the American team, Garmin Cervelo for Tyler Farrar, who went into Redon on the 3rd day of the race. They've got control now.
You can see the yellow jersey. He's bobbing and diving at the back there, about 25th position. This is not what he's interested in this afternoon. I noticed Geraint Thomas is still there in the black jersey of Team Sky, hovering in the wings, waiting to make a move, maybe for his man there, Ben Swift, but they've still got to try and catch the lone leader, Nicky Terpstra of Holland.
Well, he's doing absolutely fantastic, this rider. He's just getting on with it now. 7 seconds is the gap. He's heading up to 3 kilometres to go as he gets all the cheers here from the crowds in the streets of Montpellier. He is not going to give up. He's ridden through the wind better than anyone, but there they are.
They're all queuing up onto the wheel of the man who wears the green jersey. They're all waiting to battle with Mark Cavendish. I noticed that Alessandro Petacchi had a very good organisation around him. The last man to lead out Alessandro Petacchi will be the German, and that, of course, Danilo Hondel. But there's a rider moving on the right from FDJ.
Well, we're running very close to the crowd line. This is Philippe Gilbert who's made the move, and that's a typical move. He's an opportunist, and they're coming after him now, and there's a rider from FDJ trying to reach him here. They've just caught him at exactly 3 kilometres to go.
Well, it's a good move on that little incline with 3 kilometres to go. You have to be an extremely special athlete to survive off the front end of a peloton. Gilbert will not be happy, though, Phil, to have somebody sitting there locked onto his slipstream.
Well, I really don't know. I can't read. Could be Jeremy Roy again, who has now lost his leader's jersey, who's come out of the pack flying after him here. But they've gone under the ground, and they'll pop out the other side, and they've got a gap. And this is a gap again, which disturbs the rhythm.
A third rider has come across the gap to join them. They keep looking over their shoulders. You can't look over your shoulders at a time like this. You've just got to buckle under and keep riding and try and survive, because you know the main field is charging at 40 miles an hour.
That is Anthony Roux, I think, looking at his face, who's got in on terms here with Philippe Gilbert. They can't even work with Gilbert. He's just going far too quickly as he tries to take. He wants the points, remember, the green jersey points here. He'd love the stage win. He's had one already, but Anthony Roux is the rider in white. Now we've just got to work out the rider from Movistar who's come up.
Well, there you can see no panic at all on board the HTC High Road Express, but formally you can see Danilo Hondo there on the front coming by. Now the little bit of disorganisation.
Now this is how to beat Mark Cavendish as they go into the last 2 kilometres, is to throw individual attacks at the sprinters' team and break up the rhythm, and that is working so far. Cavendish, though, watch the green jersey. He's holding position. He is about 7 men down there. He still has control.
Well, they've got now the organisation of Lampre coming to the front end of this pack, and not far back is Gregor Bole. He'll be looking after Alessandro Petacchi. Petacchi's the rider in the pink and blue jersey there with the lime green red bike.
And the rush through in the centre in the black is Geraint Thomas trying to pull through Edward Boysenhagen up towards the line. Bit of bumping and barging. There is Geraint in the white sunglasses off to the left here. He's got held to from Rigoberto Urán, the new man in the white jersey on the Team Sky.
Well, Cavendish is boxed in at the moment, but right up there as well in about 5th position is Ben Swift. It looks as if Bosenhagen's going to make the sprint for Ben Swift this afternoon. Once again, it's Geraint Thomas on the front, but now we've got the organisation coming from HTC, but Omega Pharma Lotto moving on the left-hand side, and that's for Greipel.
And Greipel is on the left now. Now the final lead-out is trying to be started here, but very shortly it's got to be Renshaw who takes up the running. Greipel looks as though he's sat up out of this. Now Renshaw goes, and still in his slipstream is the Manx missile. Mark Cavendish is waiting to be launched, and again out of the middle of the field and the debris, he is going to launch his attack. And I'll tell you now, as I look at this, when he goes, there is nobody going to touch him, and he goes as he makes it. That's Daniel Oss who's coming after him in second place, but Renshaw is too fast for Oz. But look at the run of Tyler Farrar. Farrar coming on the right, and Mark Cavendish gets it on the line. He makes it look easy, but boy, again, only just ahead of the field.
Phil,
brilliant enough.
He didn't make it look easy, Phil. The team made it look easy for him, because he cannot win a race without that team around him, setting him up to absolute perfection. That's Daniel Oss over there in the lime green Liquigas Cannondale, but win number 19 for this man. He's unbelievable.
19 stage wins in history, 4 wins in the Tour de France. The yellow jersey is heading home to the UK. He's got a week to defend it, but more big points in the bag. 45 for that victory.
Mark Renshaw is the man on the front here, and the man is the right word. Look at the acceleration, dives up through the middle. They've got this off to perfection. Daniel Oss there in second place. Tyler Farrar in the white jersey, blue helmet, coming up very rapidly here on the left-hand side. He's closing all of the time there, as you can see, but on the line, there's no question about it. Cavendish has it, and it looks like Pataki came up there for third.
Yeah, he got third for sure, and nearer the cam at the back there was Daniel Oss. Then Rojas is the rider in black as they come through, and it looked to me as though that they got Ben Swift up in his best stage finish so far. He was in the mix as well behind those sprinters. There's the congratulations from Matt Goss there, and as Cavendish always does now, he'll go and seek out every member of his team to say thanks very much, guys. The team has won this, not just me.
At HTC, we're always looking to you for inspiration. That's why we created the HTC Desire S, so you can glide effortlessly through life. The HTC Desire S with HTC Sense is available exclusively from Telstra. Glide into a Telstra store to see the HTC Desire S in action.
Innovation. Technology. Design. Scott.
Welcome back. This is the Tour de France. We've just witnessed stage 15 and really a foregone conclusion in the end. Mark Cavendish makes it look so easy. I'm with Anthony Tan, a cycling journalist and a very good friend of ours here at SPS, waiting also for the arrival of Shane Sutton from Sky Racing. But Tanny, thanks for joining us at a last minute's notice. What do you say about this man that hasn't already been said?
Well, he told me the other day after his third stage win, Tomo, he said the absolute lack of bunch sprints will hinder his chances for the green jersey competition. Today he's proven that he's a liar because the bunch sprint today went in his favour, and then the Champs-Élysées, he was, I think he was 18 points ahead of Rojas and 26 ahead of Gilbert at the start of today. So now he's increased his lead, and I think what is a foregone conclusion that he'll take the Maillot Vert into Paris.
Well, he might be a liar, but he's a damn good liar. He's hungry for that green jersey, and we can now cross to Mark Cavendish, the stage winner.
Many congratulations, win number 19. The stronger your team get, the harder everyone challenges, and the more they want to beat you as well. They really had to work today, didn't they? Mark, you've got to get up on the podium. Well done. Thank you.
Well, it might be monotonous to see Mark Cavendish cross the finish line ad nauseum, but it just goes to show this man is head and shoulders above anybody else when it comes to sprinting. And 19 stage wins now, Anthony, and it's just remarkable. Who knows how many more he'll be able to chalk up before his career finishes.
Yeah, Tom, what we saw at the start of today was Cavendish, like he was basically, when he said the absolute lack of bunch sprints will hinder his chances, yeah, he was playing it down, and I think he knows he's the fastest sprinter in the peloton, and with guys like Renshaw and guys like Eisel leading him out, he can do no wrong.
Well, we're seeing that now, Tanny, and look, he was way ahead. The HCC colours were way ahead of anybody else in this train that was set up, and we saw what it takes to have a train organised in a situation like this at the start of our coverage today. But Cavendish in the green jersey, tucked away nicely behind Renshaw, so easy.
No, it was too easy for him. I mean, his closest opposition is Tyler Farrar and Tor Hushovd. So, you know, those guys are out of the green jersey competition, and I think with the form that Cavendish has shown at this year's Tour de France, you know, he's on for a good thing.
All right, Anthony, thanks very much for joining us as we look at the celebration from Mark Cavendish. Anthony Tan, I'm joined by an Aussie, believe it or not. An Aussie by birth, and Shane Sutton, it's really good to have you here. Of course, you're one of the team directors of Sky Racing. First of all, how did your team perform today? Were you happy?
Yeah, I think, you know, our main job is to keep Rigoberto out of trouble in the white jersey, and the boys did that well. Give Swifty a run out in the finish today, and I think he's run about sixth. I haven't seen it, obviously. Yeah,
he's just got here.
Yeah. So we're pretty happy with that, and obviously, once again, Cav proved he's, you know, the best in the world in what he does.
He sure is, Shane. Listen, I want to ask you, with the demise, I guess, for want of another word, of Bradley Wiggins, what's the tactics now, and what have they been over the last few days with Sky Racing?
Well, we had three objectives coming into the tour. You know, one was to get the yellow jersey, one was to run top 10 overall, and the other one was to win a stage. Well, unfortunately, you know, we never got the jersey. We got within 4 seconds in the team time trial. We've at this moment in time got a stage win under our belt. Rigoberto's line 11th overall, and I think, you know, you yourself watching probably think there's a bit more to come there yesterday after yesterday's performance, so I'm pretty sure we can tick a couple of boxes and try and hold on to the white jersey in top 10.
Yeah, Shane, obviously it's very disappointing and frustrating and I guess devastating for Sky Racing to see Wiggins depart this race before even the first mountain was climbed. I just want to ask you, the way this race has panned out now and, you know, the closeness of those overall contenders, I'm talking about Alberto and Cadell, the Schleck boys, etc. You know, in retrospect, would Bradley Wiggins be in with a good shot if he was still in this race?
Yeah, I mean, you know, coaching and basing everything on evidence and what we've got and what we've done with him over the past few months, and the way he rode Dauphiné, and given his ability to out-time trial everybody in this field apart, well, he can out-time trial everybody. I think they'd have been pretty worried about him by now.
Well, especially with the time trial still to come.
Yeah, and, you know, he did a cracking time trial around that course in Dauphiné, and, yeah, I think for a few of them it's a good thing Bradley's not here, because I'm pretty sure he'd have been close to the podium. If not, you know, it's a big statement to say win, but, you know, but it just doesn't, it's not just about winning, is it, Mike? It's about staying upright, you know, getting through your bad days and everything else, and unfortunately Bradley didn't stay upright, but we'll be back.
I'm sure you will be. Look, we're just about to cross for the presentation for the stage winner, and what can you say about this man? 19 wins now at the Tour de France for this year, and he is unstoppable. He's unbeatable. This is Mark Cavendish on the podium yet again in the world's greatest bike race.
Est arrivé sur le podium protocolaire, l'ovation de Montpellier dans les vainqueurs de l'étape du jour, récompensé par les autres.
Yeah, Mark Cavendish, absolutely brilliant. Shane, I want to ask you, there's a lot of speculation about the future of Mark Cavendish. HTC High Road, all the rumours are circulating about the team's future and the possible demise at the end of this year. You know, I'm hearing stories, and I'm sure you've heard them too. You probably know, and you probably won't even tell me. But look, is he going to be at Sky Racing next year?
As far as I know, Mark's a HTC rider. He's with Bob at High Road, and at this moment in time, that's all I'm prepared to say on the matter. And if Mark Cavendish came available, then, you know, obviously being a British team, we'd be looking at him.
Oh, all right, let's just be hypothetical then. How would he fit in a team like Sky Racing?
Oh, no doubt that he'd fit in, and as I said, you know, we're a British team, and it's a bit like, you know, Green Edge now. They'll be wanting all the big Aussie guns back home, and, you know, if Mark comes available, I'm quite sure that, you know, Sky will be looking at him.
Look, I want to get your thoughts on Simon Gerrans. You know, he's a stage winner at every Grand Tour. We love him, of course, in Australia and here at SBS. Before we do that and get your comments, we just want to pause now for the presentation of the yellow jersey. Thomas Voeckler up on the podium yet again, and what a popular figure this man is right around the world. Well, if a heart of gold and determination counts for anything, Shane, Thomas Voeckler certainly fits into that category.
Unbelievable, you know, and, you know, for the French people and all his supporters, it must be a tremendous feeling at this moment in time. And personally, I wouldn't underestimate the guy. You know, we've seen him stay on 2 mountaintops already. Probably not the greatest CTer in the world, but the character, you know, the jersey gives you a bit more strength. So I think he's in with a big shout.
Listen, Simon Gerrans, it's a rest day tomorrow, and I'm thinking, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the stage to Gap, stage 16, is one that could suit the Aussie.
Yeah, so, you know, Simon's having a really good tour from our perspective, probably not seeing that from the outside world, but leadership on the road. You know, we've been on the attack since Fletcher's crash, basically, since Wiggins went home. You know, that's all been marshalled by Gerrans, and he's really stepped up to the plate in this tour and led the team very well alongside Fletcher. And, yeah, hopefully Simon will take his chance one day soon.
Well, I'm hearing, Shane, that he was possibly a last-minute selection for Sky Racing before the tour started, and your influence was the one that got him into the squad.
Well, no, he was 1 of 12, as I've always stated, and, you know, was never last minute. I don't know where that's come from, but, you know, he was 1 of 12 guys selected from the beginning. He's got into the team and he's doing the business, and I think, you know, all the Aussies back home, all his supporters should be very proud of him.
Well, Mark Cavendish in the green jersey. This is probably the second last chance for the sprinters to have their say, have their time in the sun. Here in Montpellier, of course, the next time we'll see the sprinters will be on the Champs-Élysées in Paris in exactly 1 week's time. And I tell you what, Cavendish looks like he's got this competition sewn up.
Yeah, well, you know, I can't see anyone beating him from here. You know, he's got the bit between the teeth, and as I said, you know, he's the greatest in the world, what he does by a long shot, and I can see him going all the way to Paris.
Well, Shane, you've worked with him as a track cyclist. I remember when he won a Commonwealth Games gold medal back in Melbourne in 2006. You were part of that team. Tell me what makes him so special.
I have no idea, but he, as I said, he's just got a character about him, and, you know, he's human. He's like all of us, I suppose, but he has this other inhuman gene. I don't know where it comes from, but he's just like a rocket.
Hey, listen, just on Brad Wiggins, look, next year, what's going to happen with his Tour de France commitments next year with the Olympics imminent? Is he going to concentrate on a gold medal in the on the track or the road race?
At this moment in time, I'd like to think we come back and challenge for the Tour, to be honest with you, and, you know, the Olympics will be an add-on, and it's doable, actually. We've looked at it. We're doing a bit of testing in that area. 10 days afterwards, you know, the Tour, it's doable.
Yeah, well, there'd be a lot of interest. I mean, is it possible for him to do both? Probably not.
McGee did it in 2002, rode the Tour, came over and beat Wiggins in the final of the IP a couple of days later, so it's doable.
Yeah, Johnny Hogle in there accepting the jersey for the King of the Mountain. And I'm sorry, it's Van den Berg. Yes, it's Van den Berg. Thank you very much, sir. Van den Berg, of course, he is a champion, isn't he? The Belgian. I mean, it's been 30 years since a Belgian won a stage, a mountaintop finish, as we saw yesterday. What's going on there?
This kid's been the surprise of the tour to me. He's
more emphasis on the devastation behind what happened to Bradley Wiggins.
Yeah, it does, but you know, we're trying to build a team, and we said on this journey with Sky it would take 3 years. And I think, you know, you look at the way we rode last year, look at how we're riding this year. You can imagine what we're going to be like next year. And I think, you know, this is the first year's a good learning curve for us. And I think, you know, there's our man on the podium.
What do you make of him?
Absolutely brilliant. You know, he stuck to his game plan over the last couple of days, riding his own bike race. And if he continues to do that, I think he can hang on to the jersey.
Oh, yeah, he's good, isn't he? But a Colombian and a British team. Not many people would have thought that prior to Sky Racing being organised.
Yeah, I think, you know, we had a great report from Neil Stevens, your Green Edge DS, that, you know, said this is a good kid. And so we looked at him, and obviously, you know, he's on board now and doing the business for us.
Hey, Shane, thanks for joining us today. It's been absolutely brilliant. Look, you're a Aston Villa supporter from a long time ago. You love your English football, but you're Aussie through and through? Tell us.
Oh, yes.
Tell us you are, please.
I'm 100% Australian. When it comes to football and cricket, not cycling. All right.
Good on you, mate. Shane Sutton, an absolute legend. And, of course, he's a former Tour de France rider. 1987, he was the first rider to leave the starting gate for the prologue that year. And he's doing so much work, so much good work for British cycling, unfortunately for Australia. We're going to be back straight after this break and wrap things up from stage 15. You're watching the Tour de France.
The end of the Victorian era sees our pharmacists open their mind